drive through the canyon, and I'll sign back in when I get up there and join you guys as soon as I can.
Hey, Billy, can we have Tom facilitate since you're going to be a little in and out? This is Jesse.
I'll facilitate until I sign out. Actually, no, that's a good idea. Go ahead, Tom. Tom, if that works for you, that's a great idea, actually.
Thanks, Billy.
Yes, I have technical difficulties. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, Jesse.
Hurry back, Billy. Be careful. There's speeding tickets when you come into town. Watch out.
Fortunately, they're not giving him anywhere else, so just speed till I get there.
Not yet. No. Well, should we get started?
So we don't have Trustee Corvalon on, but you do have quorum.
We do.
Yep.
Billy's on. And I'm at 7:01. I call the December 19th Board of Trustees meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Mayor Billy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Here.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Here.
Trustee Severs,
Here.
Trustee Sterling,
Here.
and Trustee Corvalon, are you on? Not that I see. So please note for the record that Trustee Corvalon is currently absent.
Okay. Let's move on to consent agenda. I know that, let's say warrants, we don't need to talk about. We've been through that. Where are we on 3.3? Jesse, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to move Miranda's job contract updates to our January 2nd meeting.
Reason?
We have yet to complete the tasks that we set out to complete prior to making that approval, which was to review and update and negotiate with Miranda an update to her job description in conjunction with her her increased pay rates and her other requests that she had made of us. And I feel that that's important that we do complete that and that we keep it all consolidated. We don't do it piecemeal, and that we need that extra time to complete that remaining step. So I've discussed this with Miranda, and there will be no negative impact to her pay rate in terms of the timing, per my understanding. And so I think that we can give ourselves this extra bit of time without causing any undue hardship to Miranda in the process.
Okay. How close are we to getting the review completed? Is it something we could still get done this week? Or the job description? Are we getting close?
Well, I think it's really just a matter of dedicating and spending the time on it. I, for one, am willing to spend more time on it. Eric took a first pass, then I took it and made some more edits. And
I did too.
And okay, so we've all had a chance to look at it, review it, make some edits. And I feel like at this point, we really just need to spend some time consolidating it, ensuring that it's in a clean aim and agenda item, and then bring it back in one consolidated package into our next meeting. So yeah, as far as
Could I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, Billy.
Nicole also made some significant edits, and that is the version, Tom, that you saw, and then you added those edits. I have those. So yeah, I appreciate it. I think Nicole did a good job of kind of bringing the performance eval back into the job description. So I think we've got a lot of good editing happening, and yeah, the extra time seems like it's not going to be a problem and will be worth it. And then we can have it on consent on January 2nd. So thanks for that.
Right.
Can I ask just for clarification? So, I mean, we can't work on it without meeting. unless we continue to do it as a subcommittee of two.
How do we do it?
How do we do that? Who's going to do that? What's the process moving forward?
Billy, you want to weigh in?
Well, I think the main thing will be to take the edits that we have now that, Nicole and Tom have added edits kind of, all on one version, incorporating them all and then emailing them out for people to look at. And so whether, Eric and Jesse, you want to be the subcommittee or we change people or just do it through email. I think it's to a pretty good place personally. I don't think it's going to need a lot more work, but Jesse, you seem to be the one with the most critical eye on it. So,
Well, I'd also like to, because I only really saw what I sent out and then what Jesse did.
yeah, why don't I, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
Eric.
so it would be nice to like kind of review everyone's contributions to it and then go from and make sure that they're incorporated and go from there. I feel like the same subcommittee should finish the job.
Agreed.
That sounds good.
And does communication with Miranda need to occur with that subcommittee? Is that what we're doing? Like then presenting that to Miranda for her feedback as well?
Yeah, I feel that's a critical step is that Miranda needs to be able to review it and either push back or agree.
Mhm.
And so we need to give ourselves time for that
Yeah.
as well.
So if you and I review it and are okay with changes, we can then take it to Miranda and then bring it back on January 2nd to the full board for a vote. And any further amendments would happen in that meeting.
Can we, rather than wait until the 2nd, can we try and have it wrapped up by the 27th or 28th? So we can all take a final look? Is that?
Well, I think we're all going to be happy with it before we present to Miranda. And then if Miranda requests changes,
Right.
then obviously we would bring that back to you guys for,
Though I feel like that would need to happen in an executive session
right,
because we can't be doing this
to,
passing documents back and forth thing
Right.
outside of meetings.
yeah.
Good point.
So
So the
if-
point being is like, when does the executive session happen before January
I-
2nd?
I think it would happen on January 2nd at 6 p.m., right?
On January 2nd.
And that
I think,
hopefully is not necessary,
right.
right? But if it is necessary, then we need to schedule an executive session.
Mhm.
It sounds like a good strategy.
Like we might send it to Miranda
And she
and
likes
Miranda
it.
might say, I like this, go for it. And then we
Yeah.
don't need an executive session.
Right.
And we can do it all.
Yep.
Public hearing.
One question I had when I was reviewing it, I don't know who to address this to, but the KPIs were removed, they were in there and they were stricken. Why do we take them out?
Like, so that was one of my suggestions to take them out. And the reason why, if you look at bullet point number 1,
Mhm.
that was actually addressed twice in the previous in the document.
Yeah,
It had to
that's
deal
right.
with comprehensive plans. And in 2 places, trustee Coombs' mail had listed that there would be an alignment with the plans.
Mhm.
Furthermore, the rest of the KPIs were either not specific enough, or I would suggest that they need to go into the performance evaluation because it's not the what is the job description.
Mhm.
It's what we are looking for. The how it gets evaluated should be in the performance evaluation.
Agreed.
So those were just they were just suggestions to reduce redundancy, but then also make sure, because one of the risks that we could have is that we list a set of criteria, performance criteria in the job description
Mhm.
and in the performance evaluation. And if they don't jive with each other, then we're just kind of creating some more, which one do we follow kind of a thing. So,
Thank you for striking them.
yeah, so that is, I mean, it's a suggestion, but
Nobody disagreed.
okay.
So I think we're on the same page.
Jesse has something to
Go
say.
ahead, Justin.
Oh, I just was thinking that we should keep this to procedure and how we're going to complete this
Indeed.
as opposed to the
Discussion.
substance. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got, are you comfortable with the timeline?
Mhm.
Good. You are too?
Yep, I think I'm comfortable with it.
Good. Okay, then I'll block off 6 PM on the 2nd.
Do we need to make a motion? I think we do.
You do.
I'll second.
I need to make the motion first and I have the language in its
I already agree. Yes.
Yeah. We're removing we're removing item 3.3 from tonight's consent agenda and
Right.
moving it to January
So it'd be a
2nd.
motion to continue
Okay.
3.3 from the consent agenda. And are we motioning to continue it back onto consent or as an action item?
Consent. I was-
Consent.
Consent.
And I don't actually have the clear language in front of me. I had asked Jennifer to help with that, and I'm
I
not
can
seeing
make,
it.
I can make the motion.
Go ahead.
Are you?
Jesse, it's,
What's
Keep
that?
both hands on the wheel.
Jennifer, sounds like,
I did send it, but I thought I heard you make a motion that at the start of this.
I did too.
Yeah.
okay.
That's why I seconded.
Well, help me.
And
do
that motion was
Couple
sufficient,
through it.
Jesse.
Okay. So we're good and we got a second?
Mhm.
Somebody
Yeah.
captured the.
Can we clarify, what is the motion?
Is to remove 3.3 from tonight's consent agenda and move it to January 2nd.
Consent agenda.
To continue it till January 2nd as a consent agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
How's that for a clean motion?
Who's the second? Yeah.
Nick, second was Nicole.
All right. Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
trustee Corvalon, trustee Sterling.
Yes. Do we need to note for the record when trustee Corvalon joined?
I did at 7:02.
Awesome.
Okay. And thanks for getting all these community center releases done. I appreciate that. Looks good. Thank you for.
Who volunteered me for the BZA?
I don't know. Put your hand up. Congratulations. I think
You
you're
did.
gonna
I move to approve the consent agenda.
second.
All right. Trustee Severs.
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Sorry about that. Yes.
trustee Sterling,
Yes.
trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold.
Yes. Okay, so consent agenda passes. We move on to information items. 4.1, we've got just one tonight. Housing needs assessment presentation. You want to read it in, Miranda?
I will, yes, introduce. So we actually have here tonight Derek Webb, who's the Vice President of Bohannon Houston, and he will be presenting to the Board of Trustees the completed housing needs assessment. The full report is in your packet, and then we have a presentation that I will pull up right now, and Derek will tell me when to move to the next slide. And Derek, you'll push the button so it lights up green.
You hear me? Yes?
Can you hear Derek online?
Hello? Okay, cool.
Yes.
I'll stay
Yes,
there.
I can hear him.
Yes, I can hear him.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. Really happy to be up here, really happy to make the drive up here. I told Miranda it was really peaceful being alone for a while earlier today. But I am very excited to present the contents of the housing needs assessment. Of course, it's just one piece of the overall IHOP grant that you guys have been working through. Over the last year, I've had the pleasure of working hand in hand with you guys in the community over the last year. I'm new to my vice president role, but I've been a senior planner at Bohannon Houston for almost 3 years now, and very involved in housing across the state, and really enthused and excited about the progress you guys have made. It's amazing. It's awesome. And so I've got a few slides, if you've seen the packet, where we celebrate, but it's awesome. So, but really, a lot of that work that you guys followed through with was kind of in reference to the housing needs assessment document itself. And so I would just point out that it's formatted as a report. It outlines a whole host of information to help kind of make the background cases, provide the argument, kind of settle in with what the situation looks like, and then starts to provide some strategies and whatnot. A lot of those strategies you guys have already acted on, and you've well exceeded your requirement within the grant. So we'll get to this point in a minute, but again, just wanting to celebrate that you guys were on the hook to select or at least identify 4 strategies to move forward with for consideration. I think initially we identified 7, which we pulled through the whole plan document. And then you only had to adopt one thing. but you guys adopted 5 things, which is also amazing. And I think, you know, one of the conversations we had at one of the planning commission meetings was, yes, one thing is it checks the box, but does one thing actually do anything, right? Or is it going to do anything at the scale that you need it to do? Again, fantastic outcomes, I think, of the planning process. And so, yeah, I'll jump in, kind of walk you through what we've been up to over the last year. Miranda, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to follow along on my computer. Yeah, so how did we get here? So this is really just kind of the housing needs assessment and policy adoption conversation of the process. If you want to go to the next one. Thanks, Miranda. This shows kind of the overall project timeline. Really, it's task oriented, right? So scope of work based. It's, you know, part of the project. It's what DOLA is looking at in terms of are we fulfilling our requirements of the grant agreement and whatnot. But really, we started off almost a year to the date today. I think we kicked off December 21st last year to start the project, but really jumped right into that community housing needs assessment, and that was really the upfront existing conditions analysis of the project. And really started trying to refine that information to, again, help provide the background and information that you need to make the case, and also to educate the community and to show the community this is why we're focused on housing in such a big way. You can see from the timeline we worked through that with ongoing updates till now, because the needs assessment was just one piece. We're calling the whole thing, the whole assessment, the whole report, the housing needs assessment, but that existing conditions piece was really the upfront work in terms of existing conditions as it goes. We quickly jumped into public outreach, starting off in January. We kicked off, I'll show these in just a minute, so I'll just skip through these for a minute, but jumped into public outreach. Public outreach really ran from January through October. In a variety of ways. I'll walk you through those again here in just a second. Then we jumped about halfway, about March, April, we started to think through strategy identification. And that really started off with the DOLA IHOP qualifying strategies. So DOLA has this list of qualifying strategies that are associated with the grant for communities to consider. And our job was really to identify the most appropriate ones for the community and then start to refine what they look like and what the actual implementation mechanism looks like for the community. You can see that kind of runs through about mid-October as we start to get into November, where the planning commission starts to have conversations, the board of trustees, you guys had a work session together, that kind of thing to really drill down on how you wanted those pieces worded. Then next down, kind of September to the November range is really that draft policy and code changes section of the project. Again, it was a lot of the conversations with planning commission, the planning commission subcommittee that was set up to really refine, okay, how do we think we should propose changes to the zoning code to address these issues? And what do we think is most appropriate in terms of how it relates to the strategies that have been identified? And then you guys took it from there. I think I kind of led you there with some initial policy language or some initial best practices that we were seeing from other communities throughout the state. And then you guys took it and ran with it, and it was amazing to see. And so I think that's where you get down to the bottom with the policy adoption support, us kind of helping you tweak the language, you guys moving it forward. And then you guys, December 5th, 2 weeks ago, you guys moved forward with a bunch of stuff. So that's awesome. And again, I'm here to celebrate that. So now the meat. So if you want to go to the next one, Miranda. So so the initial effort on the community housing needs assessment, which I mentioned, was really this part 1, the current conditions and affordability challenges section. Really, again, it's outlining existing conditions and what the actual need looks like. Baked into that existing conditions is the identification of kind of the gap or the demand into the future, or the goals, kind of like what kind of housing demand you could see in the future based on housing growth, what you're seeing now, that kind of stuff, or population growth. I should correct myself. So that's really part 1. Again, that was that initial effort. And really, we did leverage the 2015-2017 housing needs assessment that you already completed. If you compare the two documents, I think you'll see they're drastically different in terms of the depth of analysis. And I think what we were trying to really do for you all was to set you up with something that was actionable and really, instead of just outlining the problems, right, give you something that you could lean on both for the argument, but also for those potential implementation strategies or action kind of things. So how to do it, how to address it, that kind of thing. I think we'll get into what's actually in the plan here in just a few minutes, but if you want to go to the next one, Miranda. This is where we started to jump into public outreach. So I paused a minute ago and said, we'll get into the details. This is the start of the details on the project website. So again, I think we kicked off this project with an understanding that the public outreach was really focused on two things. It was part outreach or part feedback. We were really seeking input from the community, but also part community education. We really wanted to elevate the conversation around housing beyond the argument, right? The argument for, the argument against, and the conflict that arises there, because everybody feels very passionate about their community, what housing can do to it, what the lack of housing can do to it, and that kind of thing. So really, it was trying to balance the two parts of that goal. We set up a project website. You can kind of see down toward the bottom of the screen. There's the I guess you'd call it the bar. The home bar or the navigation bar on the webpage. And it really consisted of these, 5 sections. Home was the homepage. It really outlined what we were doing, what we were up to, why we were doing it. The data snapshot page was really quick, and it was really an outcome of the initial effort with the community needs assessment, which is just some high-level data points that the community could maybe grasp onto, have conversations about, leverage in future conversations, that kind of thing. Planning for housing, that tab was really focused on the education piece. All of it's education, but that piece specifically was really talking about the differentiation between the diversity of housing needs in communities pretty much everywhere, but we really try to focus it and hone it in on Nederland in terms of what the missing middle housing could look like, what the housing spectrum looks like, all the way from homelessness up to single family ownership, that kind of thing, to again help the conversation around what we were trying to do. That 4th tab, strategies, was an outline of those initial DOLA qualifying strategies that were associated with the grant. Provided some high-level information on each of these strategies that were listed, and then links to DOLA's webpage for more information. We leveraged that quite a bit as we were working through that policy kind of analysis piece of the project. But we also wanted to highlight what's allowed now and kind of why we're focused in the policy realm of the project. And so that page really focuses in on what the zoning code says, what each zoning district allows at a very high level. We didn't get too much into the details of, lot size and all that kind of stuff, but really just like, where do single family homes go? Where could you even potentially put a multifamily housing unit? Where could ADUs go? That kind of thing. So, and I think I just talked through my next 4 slides, but I got excited. Oh no. Okay. So the project website, but just back to the, general information about it. We saw substantial engagement on the project website. And I think that was largely paired with a lot of the social media outreach that was happening, a lot of the conversation around the survey that was launched I think it was launched in March. And just, and obviously, if you look at the data that's behind on the dashboard for the project website, you see a lot of repeat visitors. So we had almost 3,000 total visits. Of that was almost 1,000 individual folks. Those are individual IP addresses, so individual, internet connections going to the website. So a lot of folks interested. The average time spent, about 5 minutes and 21 seconds, is amazing. It probably seems a little low, but I mean, in some cases, I look at other projects that I have, and it's like 30 seconds. So it's like real quick, nothing here's of interest, I'm going to bail right away, right? The folks were not bailing on this website. There was stuff to interact with, stuff that they were interested in. The unique stakeholders that you see on the screen was really paired with the interactive map. So about 48 individual people posting pins or dropping pins and posting comments on the interactive map, which resulted in about 125 comments on that map. The document downloads number there, the 186, we posted at every step of the way. We'd get through the public workshop, we'd post all of the material to the website. We'd get through phase 1 of the community needs assessments, all that existing condition stuff, we'd post that to the project website. So folks were engaging with that, downloading it, hopefully digesting it and really trying to latch on to what we were doing. So again, substantial, I think, in my opinion, quite a bit of engagement on the project website. Next page. Yeah, so I kind of alluded to this already in the planning for housing tab. Just these are some examples of the images that were up there, just really talking about, okay, what are we, when we talk about affordable housing or attainable housing or just the need for housing in Nederland, what do we actually mean? And where does that fit on the housing continuum? And who are we trying to really help as we think through these policy changes? So it's one example. The next one was the strategies, maybe. Thinking.
Can I ask you a quick question on that last slide?
Sure.
What's the courtyard house? Like, are they just, cause they look like tall, thin houses with just space in between? Is that just kind of an aesthetic, or is that like?
It's almost like a townhome, like a row house kind of situation where there's some communal space in between. It's hard to show in this diagram or this graphic. Typically, they're all wrapped around a courtyard where everybody kind of interacts in the middle of it.
Okay, so it's not between every unit. It's kind of like a wraparound. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, and then that strategies tab, here's just an example of it. This is a later screenshot where we started to kind of really focus in on the strategies that we were starting to propose and work with. And then the next slide is really that what's allowed now. So what does the zoning say? And again, this is just a snapshot and a really high level outline of what each zoning district allows at the high level. So. Next slide. Okay, and then real quick summary of the public workshop. So the public workshop was held on April 6th. Again, just a few months into the project, but close enough after we had already started the existing conditions analysis to really be able to report and facilitate conversations at that meeting. We had a decent turnout. I think the online engagement was substantially more than folks showing up. But again, it was one of those situations, and I think we learned a lot in how we approached it. I think had we thought through, and this is just a criticism on my part of my own efforts, but had we tried to pair it with some sort of community event that was already happening, I think we would have gotten a lot more engagement, even just standing there and trying to catch people walking by. But with that said, I still think even our afternoon. So we held two planned workshops. The first one was at 3:30, and the second one was at 6. The 3:30 one had quite a bit of turnout. At least in the expectation of how many people might come to it. Please join us. It's an open invite to everybody, and we hope to get it, at least like 12 to 15 people, and I think we hit that. So all of the workshop materials were posted to the website. A lot of really good information, I think. Plus, it was, I think, our first foray into the social media invites and trying to build some knowledge around the project at that point. We did also post or purchase a banner ad in the Mountaineer to try to reach more folks that way as well. So again, I think a lot of these things really drove traffic to the project website. And then the community survey, which I think started off a little rough. I think after the first month, and I'll get to the high level outcomes here. I think after the first month, we had about 29 responses, and we were like, oh, what do we need to do? And I think the project team really banded together and started spreading the word. I think Trustee Sterling really jumped in and helped quite a bit to push a lot of the social aspects, like the online social media aspect. And we jumped, I think at one point we were just on a weekly, okay, we've jumped up another 50 people, another 40 people, so it just took off from there. And again, I think all of that really drove people to the project website too. So the survey was available March through July of 2023. We had a total of 287 responses. And it was paired between really trying to get some supplemental demographic and socioeconomic data, stuff that we couldn't really or didn't really trust necessarily. We didn't feel was a broad enough response rate for the census, especially the 2020 numbers based, with COVID and everything. So trying to fill in some of the blanks there, but also trying to get the public perception on some of the strategies. How does the public feel about some of these strategies? And I think one of the things, if you saw any of the initial reports out of the community survey, at least that first month or two, we got a lot of the negative comments right off the bat. A lot of people that came out and said, nope, stop it. We're good. We don't need to do this. None of these strategies make sense. Don't touch the zoning, all that kind of stuff. But I think as awareness spread and we got more and more participation, we started to get those voices that you don't typically get at a public meeting. The voices that were really in agreement with, yes, that we appreciate this. This would change my situation in Nederland. This would help me stay in Nederland, that kind of thing. So again, I think it was super helpful and supportive of the project. And I think too, we were able to also grasp on, I think when we got halfway through, Trustee Sterling and I started to work through, okay, well, how can we communicate this in a way that relates back to the stuff that we're seeing in the outcomes that we're seeing in the survey? So we kind of started this, hey, did you know, post or kind of outline of potential topic areas to push out to the community. So it'd be, hey, did you know that the majority of Netherlands housing stock is single family detached housing? And do you understand, or to find out why this is important to understand, visit the project website. So again, it was this like public education, but come back to the project website and give us some feedback.
Like 93%, right?
Yeah,
I think 93% was single family housing. I remember that, like, oh my gosh, how could you not want to do something?
Right, exactly. And then, so yeah, the situational responses really helped the team understand how each respondent felt about their current situation. That really pushed us in the direction of which strategies to focus on. What could create change versus just, trying to slap a Band-Aid on something or hoping that a little change might do something. And the sentiment responses really helped further push that and identify the appropriate strategies to move forward with outside of the personal kind of attachment to their housing situation as they were reporting in the survey. So again, overall, I think it was an overwhelming success in terms of helping really push the project further. Next slide, please. Okay. I did forget one slide, and I was looking at this in the car as I was sitting in the parking lot. I forgot to highlight the interactive map. So we had 127 individual comments from those, 58 folks that were posting, and it really helped us understand locationally where the community, and this is included in the plan, but I think it's something that the community can fall back on as you're trying to spatially address where housing should go, or where your zoning code moving forward might try to incentivize housing in certain places within the community, or certain places that maybe you should avoid or protect. And so there are mechanisms that can be utilized to do that, but I think that's a future implementation consideration versus an immediate one. Yes, so we got it again. So that coupled with the survey responses was really super helpful again, and the spatial location of those community thoughts or community feedback on the actual interactive map really helped focus the strategy identification as we move forward. So then we get to the strategy identification in the project. Again, all of these things are starting to mingle together as we're working through the project now. And this slide is really just a reminder of the funding and the requirements of that funding. So, of course, many on the call or many here know that this was made possible in part by funding from Colorado Department of Local Affairs through the HB 21-1271 IHOP program. With that, again, you had to identify at least 3. You guys committed to identifying 4 strategies to move forward with and required to adopt 1 policy change. This is where we started. We started with 7 strategies, and this was the initial refinement. Again, this is at the point in time where we started to engage with I think we first engaged with the project team to vet some of these ideas, and then we shifted from the project team over to the planning commission to really dig into, okay, how could these things start to work? At this point, we didn't have a lot of the implementation mechanisms worked out yet. It was just, okay, here's the strategy, and here's some ideas on how you could actually implement the strategy. I think after we worked through that first 7, at a rather long planning commission meeting. We then came back, I think, about a month later, maybe it was a couple weeks later, I can't remember. It's all a blur now. And identified 4. So the final 4 are on the next slide. And I'll just read them real quick. The first one, allow small square footage residential units and smaller square footage lot sizes, develop flexibility in land occupancy requirements. Number 3 is increase town support and clarify procedures for the development of affordable and diverse housing options. And then number 5 was identify opportunities to expedite the development review process for affordable housing development. I think some of these, if you looked at the DOLA website and the qualifying strategy list, you won't see all of them. I think at least that last one is kind of baked in there, but in any case, a lot of the strategy alignment was we had this small mechanism on the DOLA qualifying strategy list that was other innovative approaches, and so anything that came up that fit that, we just kind of stuck it in there. And I think there was one that came up in initial conversation with staff about like just trying to work through things faster or trying to get rid of some of the bureaucracy. Not saying bureaucracy is bad, but just saying, okay, do some of these things actually have to go to the BZA or the Planning Commission, or is there an opportunity to kind of speed these things up when it's just a minor tweak to a setback or something? So that's where we landed. This is the final 4. The next slide kind of shows you implementation and the connection, and also showing that there's overlap between all of them, right? So by implementing some of these identified implementation actions that we identify through the project, you're actually hitting a number of those strategies. So it's not a one-to-one relationship. It's a multiple. And so the strategies are listed on the left. What we identified on the right was, obviously the use group table, the yard and bulk table, the ADU ordinance, and then this new article for affordable housing development supplement, which got, I think, separated into 2 things. One is the administrative variance approval process, and the other piece is like, what do we mean when we're talking about affordable, and how are we going to gauge what incentives we provide based on the criteria listing. So there's that. Next page is implementation, but wait. So this is where we're refining. So we had these ideas early on. We started off in August with the Planning Commission with that initial strategy list of 7 items. Jumped into September, where we started to coordinate weekly with the Planning Commission subcommittee to work through, again, the details to form a recommendation that we could take back to the Planning Commission to try to move it forward a little bit smoother. And I think that worked. I think that was an awesome idea. And while I think it took some more time on the back end, it really helped to move the process forward and really get everybody surrounding the ideas that we were presenting. October, again, the final Planning Commission subcommittee meeting, just how we're going to finish this and take it through to the Planning Commission, the Board of Trustees. You guys held your work session. Seems like that went really well. I wasn't here, but looks like you guys worked through a lot of really great information.
When was that, Miranda?
At the end of October.
Wow.
October.
Okay. Then we crunched.
Yeah. Yep. And then I think it was around that same time, Planning Commission took action to move it forward, to start moving forward some pieces. And then, obviously November Planning Commission action again for all of the pieces. And then you guys took action 2 weeks ago. So these are the celebration slides. Again, awesome. And you guys are like the poster child for the other communities I'm working with now, that I'm like, look, your neighbors did all this. You guys need to get moving. I won't name names, but I'm working in a community very close to you. Yes, so awesome. I mean, you guys are all familiar with these, so I won't dive into them. But really, it was amazing to see when Miranda sent me the email. I was like, look, we adopted all these things or approved all these things. So really excited to see them codified next month, right? And then I've committed to Miranda to include the codified versions, the signed versions into the plan. So you can go to DOLA and say, look, we did it. So
Yes, because we want phase 2
right,
grants
exactly.
now.
Yes,
To build.
plus it connects to Prop 123
Exactly.
and all that stuff
Yep.
too. So and you already hit, with the expedited review process with the administrative variance. I think that fits the box for the Prop 123 dollars too. So
Awesome.
yeah, so So yeah, the next two slides are just all of that detail. Again, these are all included in the plan itself. And then there are some additional strategic opportunities. I can run through these relatively quickly just because you guys are familiar with them. They are also included in the plan. But you know, it's things like, how do we, as you start to implement your programs or you start to think of other programs I almost said pile on. Well, I just said pile on, but add to or supplement your approaches. You know, when you start to think maybe through some sort of like density bonus program or something like that. Just an idea. It's included on the page. But you know, what is the criteria you're going to tweak or adjust to really make that program work? And so these are just some of the ideas in terms of affordability considerations, some of which you guys have already implemented, right? So the proportion of units in the development, I think you guys did 10% in your latest ordinance. Maybe it was 20%. I can't remember. It was on the previous slide. And then the length of time a unit must remain affordable, 15 to 60 years. That was the 20-year one. That was the one that you guys picked, 20 years, if I recall the ordinance correctly. But again, some other things like, how's the program administered? How are you going to track progress? You know, is it through licensing or you know, just, you know, is there a form or something like that? How's staff going to make sure things are being taken care of? And then, you know, how is affordability enforced in the deed restriction process is one of those. Like, how do you monitor those deed restrictions, and how do you monitor when they start to fall off? You know, obviously that's a long ways out. You know, if you're deed restricting something today and it's got a 20-year time frame, well, what happens at the 18, 19, 20-year time frame? Are you going to try to implement some programs that provides another incentive to re-up that deed restriction, right? Which some communities are doing too. So just some other ideas there. I think you guys have already jumped into the accessory dwelling unit kind of shift, but another one is consider allowing more than one ADU on properties that are still able to meet yard and bulk requirements. We talked about that a little bit with the planning commission and the project team and whatnot. So seems like as you get comfortable with the policy changes you've done now, maybe that's something that you layer on in the future and see how it goes. Maybe it's just one more, you know, that kind of thing.
I'm not sure everybody on the planning commission understood density bonus, but that seems like I think as people understood a little bit better, that's one that I think,
yeah,
if we're going to do some incremental strategies, that's probably one we could grab.
Yeah, that feels like a next.
And can you just go ahead and describe for folks who are online what exactly that density bonus is?
Sure. So density bonus would, if they meet whatever affordability criteria is outlined in your ordinance or your zoning policy for the affordability program, they could get a bonus of, say, you know, say they're building 3 units on a lot. Maybe it gets them enough space to do 4. And that helps with affordability because the developer can now maximize the use of that space. Maybe that 4th one is a market rate unit and ensures the affordability of the other 3 or something like that. I know height is an important subject for your zoning code. So I have seen in other communities that height bonuses are layered into that, where maybe an extra story is allowed. You could also couple that with, you know, a specific area of the community with some sort of maybe, you know, density bonus overlay zone or something where you pinpoint, okay, height bonuses are allowed in these areas, not in these other areas, that kind of thing. But again, those are discussions as you guys are getting more and more comfortable with the way development is taking shape in the community. So
the discussion we had on planning commission, I don't think could have happened if you hadn't greased the skids and got people thinking. And I think the fact that you got people to respond and start to think, it helped enormously when it came to undoing some real resistance to making these kind of changes.
Yeah,
it was. We were able to bang them all 8 out.
Yeah,
one night.
Yeah, it was amazing. So,
sorry, I have a question. It's Tanya. I'm online. I don't remember discussing the affordability deed restriction limit to 20 years. That after 20 years, the housing would no longer be affordable. Did we talk about that in the last meeting? I don't remember.
It's in the ordinance that you
It was
adopted.
just in the ordinance, and I just missed it. So after 20 years, it is market rate.
It can be. The owner can maintain affordability if they want to, but there's now no longer a requirement that they have to.
Wow. Is that normal? That seems not very long.
Our research throughout the state has somewhere between 15 and 60 years. We really only find that the in perpetuity, where it's, forever affordability, is really with groups like community land trusts that are specifically nonprofits that are building housing specifically to fill the affordable gap. Those are folks like Habitat for Humanity, the Urban Land Conservancy. That's all they do. And so there's no guarantee, and they're not looking for a guarantee on or a return on their investment. So,
Tom, why did you guys land on 20 years?
We kind of looked at what others were doing. And we looked at the average amount of time that people actually hold on to their homes, and 20 years seemed more than reasonable.
Yeah, it's Miranda, and I think as Derek kind of noted, I think as we start to see homes come online, especially those who are looking for the affordability designation 100%, so they can get the yard and bulk variance, there should be negotiations as they start to reach that 20-year mark. I mean, that's going to be the point of this, but we realize that going 100 in perpetuity may not attract all developers, and at this point, we really can't limit ourselves in what type of developers we want to work with, and 20 years really felt appropriate to engage, at least to get
Gotcha. But
conversation started.
But then, I know this isn't the place for this, probably I should have done it last week, but it just seems like we're kind of like compromising the character of the neighborhood for a great cause, which is affordable housing, that then later just becomes market rate, and all that's for nothing. And we really haven't accomplished anything in 20 years. After 20 years, it's all for nothing. It seems like all this will be just for 20 years isn't very long in my opinion, but all right, we'll talk later.
Yeah, I'll just, full disclosure, I missed that point too, and I definitely think we will schedule a talk later on this. Thanks.
Okay, so we could amend it if we put it on another agenda.
It's an ordinance. It's adopted.
Okay. It's adopted, but then we could bring it back for an amendment. Isn't there a time that we can do it? Is there a time frame we can do it?
So you can amend an ordinance at any point in time. This ordinance currently is set to take effect on January 7th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hate to,
Which I guess my recommendation would be allow this ordinance to take effect and then amend it, so at least you have something in place while you're seeking
Okay.
the amendment.
Okay, yeah. All right, sounds good.
And just one further point on that too. Don't lose sight that even market rate housing can induce some affordability in lower tiered housing units in the community, as there's several studies that are out there. I think I provided Miranda with one earlier today in response to a public comment. But it's really, when there is a lack of a higher end product or a market rate product, folks that can afford that higher end will step down and start to take product that doesn't really fit their needs, but they can afford, which knocks out the people that actually need that, or the households that actually need that lower tiered, and it kind of trickles down to even the lowest affordability levels. And so even by providing a market rate housing, you're actually providing an option for those people to move out of that more affordable housing that's currently in the community that somebody else could then step in and take over. So there's a kind of balance that takes place even with market rate housing being developed in the community. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we also have to not make it so disincentivized that nobody actually wants to build.
Right.
Right. That's the balance we have to strike.
Yeah.
Because if you just put everything in perpetuity or even 60 years, 60 years is outside of someone's lifespan, right, in terms of getting a real return. So if somebody wants to develop and get something out of it at the end, we need to make sure that we're not basically saying no affordable housing by making affordable housing so restrictive that nobody wants to build it.
Right.
And I think that this needs to be a part of our ongoing, yes, I know probably none of us will be here in 20 years. If we are, that's awesome. But, no, like on the BOT. Yes, alive, but not on the BOT.
Yeah.
But the point being is that we probably just need to have some hygiene around, setting up strategic goals around affordability into the future as well, right? So by year, like you were saying, 15 or whatnot, the next board is already kind of thinking through what that next program looks like.
And it is a good point, just the conversation around development in general. And if you put those restrictions too high, how it can actually disincentivize. I think it'd be a different thing if, developers were knocking down the door and trying to build everywhere right now. Then you probably would have the mechanism to twist some arms and say, no, you want to build here? It's going to be 60 years. But I think starting off with the 20-year range is probably a little comfortable and conservative to see how things go.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. While we've done some great moves, I am having to seek out developers. No developers coming to town. And so really working hard to say, and look at what we've done. And I've had some great conversations with developers. And so I do think we need to be mindful of keeping that door as open as we possibly can as we navigate how we're going to get to our Prop 123 commitment.
I have some more to introduce you to.
Okay. And I gave you a name. Cool. You want to jump to the next one? I think we talked about expedited development review. Yeah. So this really segues into I think the last, 2 or 3 slides I've got. It's really about what's in the document. So next slide, Miranda. So again, leveraging that initial effort with the existing conditions, what's the community housing kind of profile look like, the current conditions and affordability challenges, and then structuring or layering on all of the information that we were able to glean throughout the entire process with the public engagement, the strategic opportunities, identification, all that kind of stuff. You start to see the document takes shape as it is now. So part 1 is that current conditions and affordability challenges. Part 2 is the strategic opportunities. Kind of outlines what you guys recently did and how it pairs up with the identified strategies. And then it also talks about future considerations, kind of like what we just discussed. Part 3 is the community sentiment, which is another set of words for community engagement summary. And that specific section really dives into how the community felt about the strategies that we were kind of trying to work through. So it pulls that piece out of the community survey and really highlights the outcomes of that. The full rest of the socioeconomic and demographic results is in Appendix B. So we still account for everything, and all of that stuff's been included on the project website. It's all in there, but really focusing that part 3 on why we chose the strategies that we chose. Appendix A is really just a recap of the public workshop materials, the boards that we had up, the flyer, all of the outreach efforts. And then I already talked about Appendix B, but Appendix C is really the ordinances for reference. And again, we'll slot in the signed and codified ones once those are ready. So, and then my last slide is a big thank you. Thank you to everyone. I feel like this project was really successful. I think we adapted. We hit some roadblocks along the way, community survey input kind of stuff, and I think we adapted. And I think what ultimately the outcomes really speak for how engaged the community was around the topics, and you guys, taking action and moving things forward. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Time for questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the, I noticed as I looked at the survey stuff that a lot of in general, 225 would answer, but as many as 60 would skip it.
Right.
Did some people just skip the majority of them, or was it all over the map? It seems the skips are quite high.
It was, I think we got some comments, some frustrated comments, where people gave up really early on and said, this survey doesn't reflect my needs. I'm not going to fill out the whole thing. And it's like, well, you didn't get to the meat of the survey. Had they gone a little bit further, I think they would have found that providing the input on those questions would have been super helpful and relevant to their current situation. I think the spread geographically was a little beyond specifically to community, solely based on community residents. And so there were some adjacent, residents. I mean, they're residents of the community. If you think of them through the economic lens and your neighbor lens, right? You see these people, even though they live just outside the boundary in unincorporated areas, they are your community members, right? So a lot of folks, I think, not a lot, that percentage of folks that were skipping questions, I think maybe felt like some of those questions didn't pertain to them because they weren't in town.
Yeah.
And I think some of it was survey design. I think we learned a lot as we started to see how people were filtering through. We could have tweaked some questions or tweaked some of the way or the process we were forcing people to go through. That maybe we wouldn't have lost people, halfway through or a quarter of the way through. So
It looks like walkability is a big deal. Agree plus strongly agree was 90%.
Yeah.
It's ironic. I think that all of the MLS services give Nederland a very low walkability score, but I don't know how you could say that because you walk end to end in 10 minutes.
Yeah. I think the goal of that question, from my planner brain was like, let's show how densification or like providing more housing options in key locations can actually increase your walkability or get you closer to locations in the community where you don't have to use your car, or maybe you don't need a car. And we can debate that, at another meeting. But those kinds of topics, I think, was where we were trying to go with that question. But I agree. I mean, and maybe I would venture to guess that some of those MLS services or like a website like WalkScore is probably degrading the scores based on the infrastructure, not necessarily the proximity to services.
Right. I don't think it's about distance.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it's about lethality.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So.
Okay. Yeah, amenities and service, again, that ranked high. There was, were there any, when you talked about things you wish you'd done differently on survey design, what were some of the things you learned as you ran through this one?
I'm not sure the socioeconomic conversation or those specific questions were that helpful. And I think having those up front in the survey pushed people away.
Okay.
Or led to a lower, completion rate, because people are like, I'm here to talk about housing. Why do they want to know about my, annual income? That kind of thing. I think we could have skimmed that version or that section of the survey down to really just very housing specific things like how many people are in your household, how many kids do you have in your household, that kind of thing versus what's your annual income, what's your education level, that kind of stuff. So
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
On the rental side, what was your methodology for coming up with the number you did? And did you look at elasticity over the years? Because, God help anybody who has a rental to get on the market in winter.
right.
But summer, everybody wants them. But did you factor that in? How did you come up with the number you did?
Part of the number, if you look, you're probably referencing that specific like estimate section. Part of it was trying to provide a range to get to that elasticity. Like it could be as low as this, it could be as high as this. That number was really hard to nail down. And frankly, from my standpoint, it was really hard to target a number and say, this is it. Because so many factors go into that. I mean, it could be economic development, it could be workforce development, it could be the season, it could be a large employer, in the community, that kind of thing. So that was part of the range that we tried to provide, was to try to induce some of that elasticity where it doesn't nail you into one specific number, but gives you some kind of a target to kind of try to focus on. The other piece, the forecast, is really historic. And so there's no elasticity built into that other than the rough split between ownership and rental units in the community and how that has trended from, I think it was 1960, maybe, whatever the latest period we could go back up until now. So we just extrapolated that forward based on population forecast. So.
And it looks like you didn't build a lot of population growth in between now and 2030. It was 200 more people, right?
Yeah.
And then it starts to escalate.
Yeah.
And I would imagine you're looking at density of the county and overflow.
Overflow, potential for being able to leverage the housing units that are being built during that time to attract, other things too that you could extrapolate on, and it's not baked in this way, but just other things that you could think about are, the attractiveness of the school district because you've got more families here, that kind of stuff. So being able to hold on to teachers and educators and principals and that kind of thing. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Did you make many assumptions on what happens to our downtown commercial district in making your growth rates and employment that's going to result?
Only only in the assumption that if you do nothing, economic vitality will go down. That you will struggle to find employment. Like, and I think that's the piece where we start to bring in the commuter conversation into the analysis to understand how many folks are commuting out of the community to jobs. So living here, but you know, working in Boulder or whatever, or the flip side, who's living outside because they can't find housing in the community and would love to live here, but are also working jobs here. You know, Britt is a great example. I know I've talked to her. She'd love to live here, but she can't find housing right now. So she lives in Erie, or I know she moved recently, so I don't know. Yeah, you know, but I know she would love to live here and live in the community that she's also contributing to. You know what I mean? So, and I feel like there's probably a lot of folks that are in that same situation on that commuting trend. And so if housing doesn't shift, you run the risk of losing those folks, right? And then having to try to figure out how to backfill. And then you've got, you know, restaurants that can't stay open every day of the week, you know, that kind of stuff. So
We got a lot of work to do.
We do. Well, yeah, we really appreciate your guidance. It was a hell of a year.
it was. Yeah, I know. Well, and to be honest, I'm kind of sad it's over because, you know, I really like working with y'all, and I have been a visitor of Nederland for quite a while, and I bring my kids here every summer, and so I hope to be back and working. But you know, you may see me as a visitor.
Come on up, because I would love to continue to work with you on future strategies
Yeah.
and what order we want to
Yeah.
put them together
Yeah.
in. And I'll buy.
Okay.
I'll get pizza for all your whole family.
Thanks, Derek. We appreciate you.
Thanks. Thanks so much. All right.
We'll keep that seat open for you.
Cool.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Okay. So I guess we've concluded our informational items. Billy, where are you at? Are you getting close?
I'm in Boulder, so I'm just trying to figure out when I'm gonna run the gauntlet up the canyon. So,
Well, we got, you know, we got a discussion. Do you want us to work on discussion items as your cell phone signal disappears? Are you comfortable with that? And then we'll,
yeah.
maybe you'll be up top by 5.2, the Tourism Advisory Board.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
I think.
Okay,
Thank you.
absolutely. Come on up, May.
Thank you.
May Gerald, Griffith Street. Billy, since you're still in phone contact, I was just wondering if I could make my really quick public comment.
Pull over, Billy.
Anyway,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
thanks,
definitely.
Billy, and thanks, Tom. Well, as you guys know, it should be in the packet. I'm asking for a vote on the Walmart-style childcare that's being proposed for my neighborhood. So very often, people put a lot of time and energy into their comments, and there's no board discussion. So I'd like to see the remainder of my time to the board to discuss this. I just ask that you don't talk about personalities or perceived personality issues, and just talk about the advisability of bringing a highly contentious issue to a vote. And if you guys are right, that you are on the right track, that will be shown by the voters. So I'd like to ask that it be brought to a vote. The neighborhood will help draft the alternative ballot initiative. We understand that the Gillespie House may not be movable, so we would craft a plan that's truly workable as an alternative for this site. So I think I've taken about a minute. Thank you.
Faster than that. It's on the docket for tomorrow night for Planning Commission, as a discussion item. So no, not an election, but just we're going to be taking another look at the childcare in the neighborhood. It's on as a discussion item for tomorrow night.
Well, if I may, go ahead, Tanya.
Well, May, I was just going to say, you know that it doesn't take too many signatures on a petition to get it on the ballot and it mobilizing the
Yeah,
community.
but you know, Eric
It
was
seems like an
saying,
important
this is-
issue. I think you could do it.
Yeah, I've really spent a lot of my time, 3 years now on the animal ordinance. Do I really need to spend the holiday season going around and getting signatures? Because you can't recognize that this is a simple thing to put it on the ballot. And I just want to know why you won't, if that's your position. Putting it off until tomorrow, Tom, is not what I'm asking.
It's not on the docket tonight.
Yeah,
I'm asking that during my 3 minutes, you guys respond.
I'd respond. So the first I've heard of, someone just point blank saying, um, that we should put it to a vote, what was in a recent comment that we got from April, I think. And I think, that what we've said, which is we've said about so many other items, is that anything can be, brought to a referendum, as we've seen, if we make a decision. So we do, we do know that it could go to a vote either way, and and we could even decide to put it as a vote. I mean, my personal opinion was a vote would ensure that childcare center would be built on the township site. That's just my opinion. That is what the electorate would choose. But it's definitely an option that it could a referendum if people didn't like our decision. And the point is we're not at the point of a decision anyways. And putting it up for a vote is a possibility, but we're also working with Teens Inc. and talking about options and be it there or elsewhere. So there's a process that we're doing now. So I don't know that just abandoning the process and moving to a vote would be the most prudent way to go. Personally, what do other trustees think?
Billy, I just want to say that
Let's
What
take it
if I-
back. This is a
by
non-agenda item.
drafting a lease,
Okay.
you're really moving forward. And
This,
so I would just I'd like to get the other opinions of the trustees here.
we're off topic and no, we won't, or unless you guys care to. But this is a non-agenda item.
I mean, I guess just for the sake of it, I think that we need to have something to vote on, and I don't think we have anything to vote on right
We
now.
don't.
And if we're voting on something that's not even being proposed, then there would be no point in wasting all of that time and people's energy in casting a vote. I have no problem with this going to an election at all, but I think we need an actual decision to be going to an election, and we don't have that yet.
Not even close. Okay, anybody else want to say anything?
I just want to say that as a matter of principle, I do appreciate the role that elections play in our government. And this came up with regard to the pump track. And I think you may showed up and said, hey, put the pump track to an election. And, I was tempted to go down that route and recommend to the BOT that it go to the election. However, Kathleen Chippai made some comments that said every time somebody shows up and asks for something go to an election, if we just say, yeah, go to an election, we're not doing our job. And that is to make hard decisions as elected representatives. And there is a very clear democratic process as a citizen to call for a referendum and a vote. And I would like to see that exercised more when there is a strong desire to have an election. And I would be open to lowering the threshold of the number of signatures required to trigger an election. I was in favor of that for the annexation debate, and I would be open to that across the board. But that, again, is a topic for another day.
So a referendum petition or an initiative is driven by state statute, so you can't change that
Got it.
percentage unless you become a home rule community.
Well, there we go.
That's another
So,
discussion.
how many votes does it take to get something on a ballot?
60 signatures, I think.
And then on this petition, it would have the ballot language on it that people would be signing the petition for?
Right, so the way an initiative would work is that an ordinance would be drafted. It could be drafted by community members and then they circulate it. A petition that would have the ordinance language on it. I'm just trying to read really quick. I think it's, I don't know if you're imagining, I think it's 5% of the registered electors in the city or town
Gotcha.
on the date of such
Well, I
note.
mean, I still suggest to May that if it's very important that to not hold her breath, that it's going to get done through this process. It might, but if it's very important, I would start working on it if it was me, if it were me. And maybe delegate it to someone else in the neighborhood who has more time.
Thanks, Donna.
Okay, let's bring it back. The non-agenda items was way down at 9. I think we've crossed that, and we'll see if there's any more when we get to that. But right now, we're at 5.1, budget and fee schedule. Miranda, do you want to read that in?
Yes, I'm going to co-present this with Rita, and Rita is online. So,
Hey, real quick, Miranda, I'm about to jump up the canyon. Is this approximately how long do you think you'll be on this subject?
About one Canyon Drive.
Perfect.
40 minutes.
Perfect. I got a couple comments and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Okay, so at your meeting at the public hearing in November, you had a robust discussion about a variety of budget things and asked us to bring it back. And so we're not reviewing the budget in its entirety. We sent it to you well in advance in hopes that you have. We are just highlighting the changes. And there's actually been a few changes as we put this in the packet. So we'll go over those tonight. First things first, we always just want to quickly do the review reminder about the strategic plan. I wasn't going to go over those slides, but wanted to keep that in the forefront of your mind that most of this budget is tied to the strategic plan. Rita will talk about revenue, or I'll talk about the updates on revenue expenditure. Rita will give kind of that tax revenue 5-year trend. We'll go over next steps on the proposed budget, and then of course, ask for questions and comments. So again, strategic plan, as a reminder, there are 6 objectives within the strategic plan and each one has a budgetary tie. So I'm just going to run through these very quickly. You can read them in the packet because I know everyone's here for the update. Obviously, at the last meeting, we talked a bit about, we were proposing speed cameras at the time and that the board was split on that, so that did not move forward. But we did have Boulder County officers here who spoke a bit about extra duty and what they could do during shifts. And so Sergeant Merriam couldn't be at that meeting, and I know he's working on jumping on. He'll be on tonight, but went back and talked to him, and he really does feel like between a combination of what I call Boulder County Nederland-based sheriffs as well as extra duty, we have an ability to increase revenue. I wrote 359,700. This is actually since increased, and I'll go over why. So more anticipated revenue per Sergeant Merriam and some of the work he has done. A slight adjustment with EV chargers. The Board of Trustees talked a bit about charging more per hour. Leah had some great conversations that said charging by kilowatt is way more appropriate. And actually, even the hourly rate at $10 an hour was not even going to be enough to break even on our bill. So some really fascinating research that Leah did to provide more information, and she is on as well to speak about that. So this all jumped your possible revenue. I think previously we were about $250,000 to over $500,000 in new revenue sources. And so if you took a look at the budget we put in the packet, at what point in time we were almost negative 400,000, we're about negative 150. So huge kudos to town staff, Rita, Asa for all the work they did, and Leah for taking a look at these things a little more. So let's get into speeding tickets. I'm going to do a brief overview, and I thought maybe after this I would stop and let Sergeant Merriam jump in on anything I've missed. So what I'm calling Nederland officer issued tickets, these are our dedicated officers who are already here. Asa talked to the officers after they had spoken, and kind of the agreement was, they're looking at the minimum of 2 tickets per officer per day. That's still pretty low, but if they got called out, very realistic. So you're looking at 4 tickets a day. Each ticket on average is $165. So we're looking at $660 per day. When you look at every year, that's an increase, that's a revenue of $240,990. And that again is being done just by the officers who are on shift. There's a lot in this slide. So then you asked us to look into extra duty. In talking to Sergeant Merriam briefly today, he actually put out extra duty already just to see interest, and it is very popular, widely popular. So we're seeing a lot of officers sign up even in the month of December. However, still being really mindful that we want to be conservative. That may just be an initial spike. And so what we've done here is let's just operate off the assumption that we're doing extra duty 8 months out of the year. Trend seems to be that we can do this all year long, but let's be conservative here, 8 months out of the year. We anticipate that officers will sign up for 18 shifts per month. Currently, we're seeing about that many shifts for just regular extra duty, so about the same amount of shifts for dedicated traffic extra duty. Your traffic extra duty shifts are typically 4 hours. To entice officers to come, Sergeant Merriam recommended making that a 6-hour shift where we pay for drive time. Eldora Ski Resort pays for drive time. It really helps a lot. During an extra duty shift, typically an officer writes 2 tickets per hour. When looking at how much we budget, I think I've spoken about this before, depending on rank is how much we pay for an extra duty officer at double time. So we're recommending using the sergeant rate, just so we have that budgeted appropriately, and that's $85 an hour. It was really important as we were navigating this with Sergeant Merriam and Rita, like how are we gonna kind of tell the difference between our Nederland officers and extra duty? They do these daily field activity reports, which we can match up to the separate billing because extra duty is billed out separately. And Sergeant Merriam sees no issues in our ability to provide reports to you all saying, of this revenue, this much came from extra duty versus regular officers. So if you look at the expenditure, oh, that's Sergeant Merriam's on with children, I think.
Yes,
Hold on,
sorry.
Lisa.
I will mute my.
So we're looking at expenditure of 6 hours per shift at $85, 510. 15 shifts per month, the expenditure is 61,200. Then you look at the revenue side. Again, looking at 8 tickets per 1 officer times 15 shifts. If you notice from the revenue, we're actually only doing 6 months of revenue. Again, better to be more conservative. So we're just kind of taking into consideration, it's better to do half a year and let's reassess mid-year and perhaps we'll do a supplemental even though we don't love it. Really just let's reevaluate in 6 months from now. But in that breakdown, and this is the change, why it's red, it's a change from what was in your original packet because your original packet recommended 10 shifts a month. And ASA feels confident we can go to 15 shifts a month. So under this structure, you're looking at an anticipated revenue of $118,800. So combined between the two, you're looking at about $360 in an anticipated revenue. So ASA, your turn, if you want to add anything to what I've just shared.
Yeah, so I didn't expect this extra duty for traffic to be so popular. And we had 19 people sign up just in December. And the expectations for that, like Miranda said, were 8 tickets per 4-hour shift. I was talking to Rita about it. The numbers aren't exactly what you'd anticipate from exactly 12 shifts. And that is because if people are already in town or working Eldora or another assignment in the mountains, we didn't feel it was fair to charge Nederland for drive time both ways if they weren't specifically driving up there. So 12 shifts at 6 hours would be 72 hours. So for the 12 shifts I'm giving an example of, it was only 66 hours billed because of the not wanting to double charge the town if people were already up there for drive time. And then there was a couple of times where deputies were doing something else and they just didn't want to work the full 4, so they did a 2-hour shift between other things. And same on that drive time, not wanting to take advantage of Miranda's generosity in that. So in the 47 hours of worked time, we didn't quite average 2 tickets per hour. Couple things with that. Sergeant Sears worked a couple shifts. He was called away for a family disturbance to cover the Nederland deputy because that was a 2-deputy call, and it was a physical disturbance. And then he also was called away at one time to help another deputy on an arrest. Sergeant Frayne was up there and just the wind and conditions didn't allow him to get too many tickets because the snow was blowing across the road, and so everybody was driving slow. And then Deputy Crawford, his first stop of the day was a revoked driver in an unregistered vehicle, and he ended up doing a vehicle tow and a lot of other stuff with that. So even with all those different factors and the snow, we were still able to get 80 tickets in the 47 hours. So still pretty close to the 2 an hour. There's 2 tickets I know of where somebody was passing on a double yellow. So that is a more egregious charge. And the highest speed we got was 78 miles an hour in the 25-mile-an-hour zone. So that one will be higher than the 165 whenever they go to court. But in our billed hours, the town ended up paying at the $85 an hour. It would be $5,600. And if you take the 80 tickets and average us $165, $13,200. Therefore, in that 12-day period, making the town total revenue of $7,600. And I think that's a good example of what we can expect, knowing that every time isn't going to be 2 tickets per hour, and sometimes will be more. But knowing even if they get that, the return on investment will be, I think I figured out to be 135% on average.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm asking for the increased revenue to 61,000, and then I believe, we have 118,000, which is just short of 100% revenue. I think I like staying conservative. I would rather wow you guys than disappoint you. I think doubling your money at minimum would be very doable for our staff.
So maybe just really quick, what I will add is the budget, obviously, these figures just came to us today. So the budget you have doesn't reflect it, but of course you're going to increase expenditure, but you're also increasing revenue. And so we are not anticipating, I would say, a huge impact to the budget, but just clarification that it's not reflected in your budget.
And so the net change is, do you
So
have that?
when I will be presenting the, the
Okay, you'll have
general
that.
fund, I'll be talking about that.
Okay, cool. I think, what I'm coming away with is, number one, thank you, Sergeant Asa, for making it safer out there, number one. I mean, 78 miles per hour in a 25 is ridiculous. And I know when the officers were here last, they were saying that they were, just watching an average speed just in general was way beyond, it was like close to 50, way beyond what we want to see out there. So appreciate you guys just being out there, watching it, keeping it safe. And, I'm hoping that this is something that isn't always continuing, isn't always a thing, but for right now, it is a thing. So thank you.
Yeah, and then I think to add on to that, looking at, if I remember correctly, the total tickets for that December timeframe I looked up was, if I remember correctly, 97, which means there's 17 tickets issued in Nederland that weren't part of this traffic extra duty. And that was Deputy Stavko just working an assignment up there, or when he was assigned to the mountains and going through Nederland. And then also Deputy Conrad, one of your assigned deputies on night shift, was writing those as well. So the message has got out, and I think they are pushing to get that average 2 per shift.
Yeah.
I have a question real quick about the full-time officers that we have, not the extra duty. The 2 per shift, is that suggested? It's not a quota. It's not mandatory, right?
No, that's just so, and they haven't even started yet. So they're in the police academy. They just graduated last week. and they'll
Right, but
start training.
also
But the
speaking
people that are
standards.
working the extra duty assignment, I have told them my expectation is if you are not going to calls, I want you out and trying to get 2 tickets a day. So it's an expectation, and it is not a quota.
Okay. And same with our full-time staff that we're gonna have. They're not
Yes,
a
they will
quota.
have the same expectation.
Yeah,
Quotas
I
are
like
not
I like part of
quotas are
it.
not good.
No, I don't like that at all. So okay, that's good.
Yeah, no quotas.
Well, and I think for really quick, sorry, for just sake, I realize that it comes across that way in here. Obviously, for budgeting sake, we have to anticipate how many tickets per shift. So there are circumstances in which, as Sergeant Merriam noted, things are going to change. But just for the sake of budgeting, that felt like the safest way to do it. So I realize it comes across that way, but it's really for budgeting sake. So it's grounded in actual figures.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the methodology. And I'm also completely comfortable that this team has to constantly rejigger what's important right now, most important.
Sergeant Merriam, just out of curiosity, are yourself or the deputies recognizing if these are mostly locals or tourists or visitors?
So I took advantage of this overtime and did a couple of them. And for me, it was mostly visitors. I did have a couple people who were frequent visitors of Ned. But I have only talked to deputies specifically on one local.
Okay.
And it wasn't a complaint or anything, just saying, I did get a local, but it wasn't by any means the majority.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So in terms of process, we're, Rita, this is, I guess, directed to you. Are we still on to have the data we need to approve this budget on January 2nd?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
So if you're good on this, now let's get to the expenditure part.
Here we go.
So obviously, when you approved your contract for Boulder County, I had said you don't need animal control. So I want to clarify first. We are still not seeing a huge uptick in animal control calls. So that sentiment still stands, and that this is not a big issue in town, having a lot of kind of the animal related calls. However, it's so complex when we get them. Right now, when we get a call, typically like 5 of us have to get involved. You've got Britt and Jake from a code enforcement standpoint, and they can only enforce up to a certain amount. We only have code enforcement on certain days. Law enforcement can't step in until maybe if it gets criminal in nature. And so we just have a lot of situations where residents, when they are seeking support, really feel quite let down because we're like, who's going to handle this, and what can we do and what can we not do? So it is our recommendation to go ahead and move forward with a contract amendment to bring on the .2 an animal control officer. By paying, you don't need a full-time animal officer. So by paying for .2, what that means is that there will be an animal control officer that's kind of a part of the Nederland team. However, even if they're not in Nederland boundaries or nearby, Boulder County Sheriffs will respond until an animal control officer can arrive. And so in talking to Sergeant Merriam, the price did go up slightly, for 2024, with just generally their pay. So you're looking at $23,651. And in looking at how much time, like especially Britt's spending on this, it really is a worthy expense because there's a lot of town staff time or code enforcement time going into trying to navigate these situations. And we recognize that when people are calling, they want immediate response. They don't want our code enforcement coming a couple days later. And so we are asking for your consideration. And I don't know, Sergeant Merriam, if you have anything else to add here, but do feel that this is beneficial. And they said, we don't need to renegotiate the whole contract. They would just add it on as an addendum to the current contract.
So I think the benefit of it is that you are paying for animal control, and if there's any animal specific investigations, they would handle it. But animal control works normal hours, 7 days a week. So they are the 8 to 5, and then they don't have to work on our premium holidays. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So I want that to be clear. It's not 0.2 of 24/7, 365. However, you would get animal control coverage 24/7, 365 through your town deputy, myself, or the nighttime deputy. The example I'm thinking of is we had dogs at large that went into a neighbor's yard and attacked the homeowner's dog, not injuring it. Those same dogs, about 2 weeks later, got out of their yard, chased a dog in the neighborhood, and were nipping at it. Once again, not injuring the dog, so not rising to a criminal event. If it was criminal, I would have been able to handle it for our contract because it's a state crime, not an animal control issue. But because it didn't rise to that level, I didn't do anything, and the code enforcement couldn't do anything because it was too high of a level for them. So if we can go with this 0.2, if an animal control officer isn't available for whatever reason, they're on another call or they are off because it's night shift, the deputy assigned to town would fully cover that call, if that is helpful.
And what I will add is, so we kind of operated on maybe the assumption you might be interested in, and we added it into that budget that is in the packet. So that is being considered in your current budget. That's, negative 150. And so as you see, because of the other revenue streams that we've brought forward, the impact, you don't see a significant negative impact. And we do think it will help residents, especially in that situation that was tough because, they're calling Britt and we're calling Jake and we are trying to navigate how do we handle this at a code enforcement level. And it ended up in this really gray area, and really just recognizing that community members are not seeking gray responses when they have an animal call. So really recognizing now that we're a couple months into this contract, the value in this. And so that it is now town staff's recommendation.
Got it. Is there, I guess I address this to both of you. Is there, if you charted this over the course of the day, is this typically a daytime problem, nighttime problem? Or is any?
Well, and we also have Britt on too, who fields a lot of these calls. So I don't know, Britt, if you have kind of a pulse on how you're receiving these animals, because even when you call dispatch, they're calling you call Britt. They're directing people straight to Britt. So Britt, what's your take?
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm having issues on my line. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We do.
Can you rephrase that question? I'm having the worst time on my speaker on here.
Yeah, no, the question was, when you're getting the animal control, the animal related calls, are you seeing that they're daytime, nighttime, weekend, like
all times? Like it can be during the week. It's been more frequently that it is like holiday or nighttime calls. And we try to, handle them next day, but it's quite a lengthy process with how it is now. So I wouldn't say there's like specific times. It's probably more evening time lately.
Isn't this been more of a recent kind of trend?
Yes.
Where last year when we were talking through budget, we talked about very few calls, so we kept it out. I'm just a little worried that this is kind of a reaction to this recent trend. Personally.
So I would say that what I'm seeing is there's a lot more activity in regards to animals getting bit or people getting bit. And I can't handle that when it's a Thanksgiving on a Thursday and be able to appropriately call these people and also maintain kind of my own schedule and work-life balance. And that's not the response that we should be doing either. And so it has amplified, I would say, from when I took over code, like kind of the animal code with Jake. It's increased significantly. So I don't think the chain that we have now can properly handle those kinds of situations. Barking dogs and things, I think we can handle no problem.
But maybe what I'll add too is sure, I understand what you're saying, but I also really recognize and getting the calls and working with Britt on like, how do we respond? Like, people are looking for immediate response to their animal call, and our code enforcement team isn't going out at 11 at night, nor are we about to get involved in maybe these dog on dog related incidents. That's not what we're trained to do. And so, you know, while our code enforcement can cite them, it's going to be kind of during daytime hours after the incident is done. We need to find proof where law enforcement will be able to respond on the spot to these calls and assess what's going to be the right move, whether it still is a municipal code violation or is it criminal. They'll write the ticket into municipal court. And so, you know, you'll even see in Sergeant Merriam's staff report, he pulls a graph that shows animal, and there's still very low calls, but I think I'm concerned about that we're not responding appropriately to our community members when they're in need or they're in crisis. And our response is like, we'll get to you on Thursday when code enforcement here. Like, when you're having a crisis with an animal, is that really the response we want to offer our community? And unfortunately, we really didn't recognize that that was going to be one of some of the limitations when we were first recommending not doing animal under the current contract.
Got it. Yeah, I think I personally think it's important. I advocated for it when we were doing the contract the first time. And I thought of it more in terms of barking dogs, but roaming dogs who bite are another issue altogether. It's a safety issue, one of the most fundamental safety issues if you have children.
Right. And our team, again, I guess going back to reiterating that, like, I would never send out our code enforcement team, would never send out Britt to go intervene in that situation. That's not our background. And unfortunately, really recognizing that that's that gray area. We're going to cite code that, yes, you have an aggressive dog and we can cite code, but not in that moment. We're not going to go intervene and break up animals when that's happening under the current structure.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of thinking, I'm not sure that anybody needs to do that.
Until they come after you and.
I mean, I've on my running route, I've got a dog that nips at my heels every time I go by that house. I've never even considered or imagined the notion that I would call anybody to report that dog, because I don't think that it's a serious issue.
Yeah, but if
And
he
I
bit
think you're in
you,
the,
that would be different.
and I think you're in the majority of people that would say that's a dog, or that's how dogs behave, or
Right.
oh, I know that I just need to run on the other side of the road. I have the same issue in my neighborhood in Firestone. If I see a dog in the yard on a specific house, I go across the street because I'm afraid he's going to jump a fence and get my dog. But now I think there's just enough people that it has happened to that are willing to call, and that's why we're seeing the uptick. I don't think there's any more aggressive dogs in town, or someone moved in with a new pack of mean dogs. I think there's just certain people that said, you know, this has happened 15 times. I am now tired of it. I finally want something done.
Yeah, I guess my difficulty with it is, I'm not sure I want to spend $23,000 on those people.
Well, I disagree.
I know you do.
And I always will. Yeah, I think if it's a threat to me and or.
Well, I'm just not sure it is.
Yeah. Okay.
I think then, you guys, well, one thing I would say is, as staff,
Annoyance maybe, but threat, I don't know.
yeah, as staff, we're going to need your support. I mean, we're just going to need your help. I mean, I feel for how challenging this has been to Britt, which again, in a moment that is considered a person's crisis, we're saying, we'll call you back. We're considering just driving it to the safe bet line, which means you're going to leave a voicemail, and we'll get to you when we get to you on your animal related incident that does not rise to criminal in nature. And I'm just not really sure that that's what we want to tell the community. Like, oh, you're being attacked by a dog, leave a message. That would be my concern.
Jesse.
I agree with you, Miranda, on this one. I think we talked about this, and you said back when we had Nederland PD, they were able to respond to dog calls, but now with the sheriff, it's a different protocol, so we have to do the animal control. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, when we had Nederland officers, they enforced every part of municipal code, where Boulder County said, if you want us to do animals, you have to pay for animal control. So that's the difference here.
So, I mean, I think that having people go to voicemail over something that is scary to them, I think it's very scary when a dog runs into your yard and it runs into your yard and attacks your dog, and you might have young children, and you might want that put to a stop immediately. So I don't think that's just like a nuisance. I think that's could be quite a danger. Um, so I agree with you. I think it's okay to spend the money on this. But I'm not happy about the way the system's set up. That is just the way it is at the moment, since we're using sheriff, not our own department.
Jesse and Billy?
Well, Jesse, you can go ahead. I've got.
Go ahead,
So-
Billy.
I got. We kind of what we do have is someone that moved in with a pack of dogs in Old Town. So I kind of randomly, got roped into it because someone contacted my wife, and like, so it is, and their dog got beat up, and like, I'm challenged by it because obviously I know the stress that caused them directly. I know the stress it's causing my wife with our kids running around, and me too. And I don't know. I'm torn because at the same time, I do wonder what the true public sentiment is on animal control. I mean, if for me, all I want it for is, um, if we, I don't know, like it is a lot of money, but it's also, yeah, obviously if someone gets really chewed up, it would have been well worth it to have spent it and prevent that. And, it's just that rogue, dangerous dog that bothers me. Like, dogs off leash, that doesn't bother me. Our dog wouldn't go to the bathroom if she wasn't off the leash. So it's kind of like my problem with animal control is it's not just, it's a combination of the optics of it with just the, again, BCSO, this is you coming in and now all of a sudden we got this as well. And it's going to just be attributed like, this is how we do law enforcement now. And, yeah, so I'm glad we don't have to. I mean, to me, it's like I think it's worth more discussion, and we decided tonight we do. But like, I'm I'm glad that the budget's trimmed down where it doesn't seem like such a hit. But at the same time, it's a decent amount of money, and in general, it just seems like it's been really minimal, and we've just got this kind of recent trend. That's
Well, I
where
just
I'm-
want really quick on that kind of comment of, I think our ask is that you discuss this tonight. Like when we go to you on the 2nd, we really don't want to be talking about this budget anymore. It should be, it's ready to go. It's ready to be adopted. So my ask would be you make your decision tonight on this matter, whether you want to keep it in the budget and it is in the budget now, or if you want it removed.
Jesse?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings. I grew up in a small mining town, historical mining town, smaller than Nederland. And as kids, we would run around and we had 2, 3, 4 dogs in our gang at any given time. And there was other gangs of kids and dogs. And occasionally there was big fights that broke out that amongst all the dogs and all the kids. And they were fun. And nobody ever got hurt. But, I kind of grew up that way. And I mean, and badly, we scraped ourselves and got plenty of, yeah, exactly. And, I've always had a big Newfoundland here in Nederland, and it's a 130-pound breed that's really friendly and bred to basically be a nanny dog. And, I specifically am attracted to that breed because it's big and difficult to intimidate, but it's incredibly friendly and nice. And I like going on mountain bike rides with my dog off leash occasionally. And but my dog minds me really well. Always comes back when I call it. Reads other people's body language if they want to be friendly or not. I have kids at home. I have a bunny at home that pushes the big dog around the house. The bunny is alpha on the dog. It's pretty funny. So when I moved in, well, I'm curious to hear from Britt if this uptick in reports of dogs, is it does it seem like it's one particular dog, or is it just a phenomena where people are getting the idea to call in about dogs? Can you speak to that? And then I have more.
I know she's having connectivity issues, so if she's not there, I can. It is multiple dogs, multiple calls. You know, when we have a call, for example, this incident Sergeant Merriam spoke to, we received multiple reports about this dog, but then, you know, a few months ago, we received multiple reports about another dog. And so it is different animals, but lots of calls at one time when they happen.
I gotcha. So when we moved into our new house across the street from the community center, and that was 10 years ago, we have chickens. And Angela was out there with my now 12-year-old, who was 2 at the time, and it was in a snowstorm, and she was attending to the chickens. And our 2-year-old was there in the snow accompanying her, and our neighbor showed up with a pack of dogs, about 4 or 5 dogs, and they came into our yard and started baring their teeth and growling. And then Angie threw some snow at the dog to shoo it away, and then the dog was continuing to show signs of aggression. And so Angie tossed the shovel in the direction of the dog, and the dog got the hint and ran away. And then Angie went to the neighbor and said, "Hey, would you mind keeping your dogs out of our yard, please?" And she then went on to, you know, scream and shout at Angie, and we've never had a good relationship since. And that's been one of the main reasons why I was motivated to find an avenue for us creating some sort of good neighbor guidelines and incentive. And, you know, I haven't been able to find that, how we could do that or achieve anything like that at the time. But we, after many attempts, got the police involved, and we asked the police to intervene and to help our neighbor not come into our yard and essentially allow her dogs, or many dogs, to roam all over our street right outside our house. And she does rescues, so she's always bringing home troublesome dogs, really. And I have two young daughters, and I want them to feel safe to walk up here to the community center. And so while I don't really want to have animal control, I have been practicing realizing that, you know, my daughter's is different. You know, I tend to, you know, I've traveled all over Mexico and Latin America and South America with a backpack as well, but I don't feel so inclined to do that with my wife and my 2 young daughters. And so I'm looking at the world differently. So I also have mixed feelings about it, but I rather feel inclined to say okay to this. Miranda, could you tell me the number again that we're talking about?
23,651.
That seems like a relatively low number to me.
Just from my perspective, this is Asa from the sheriff's office. It seems like the idea is we don't mind when people have their dog off leash in town if they're with their dog and it is listening and it can be hailed back. The issues are the roam free dogs that are not near their owner or have escaped their yard and may become aggressive. So my initial thought hearing you guys talk was maybe this could be another way for revenue. So when I was growing up, my wife lived in the city of Boulder, and they had, I think it was called the Sight and Voice program or something along those lines. And I had to show proficiency with my dog that he would be hailed back to me if he was out in the field. So if I called him back, he'd come back to me. And then at that point, you could basically earn for a fee. I think it was $15. It was very minimal, but yeah, I could earn to have my dog off leash in certain areas if I was present. Now, if my dog got out of the yard, I could still be summoned for dog at large, things like that. But if he was in my sight and he would respond to my voice, I could pay a fee so that I could still do that. So if that's something you want to do, take your Newfoundland on a run with your bike, and you know they will be hailed back to you, you could pay a fee and show proficiency and be able to have your dog off leash in town limits. But we
Ooh, I
could
like
still
that.
be able to enforce the dogs that get out and aren't with their owners, or even if they are with their owners and don't respond and go after somebody, we could still charge that dog at large, but it would maybe give a incentive for the people with the well-behaved dogs to still get that Nederland feel where my dog just sits with me on the bench.
I guess for me, and the many people I know who like their dog off leash and their dogs are well behaved with or without them, I think they'd rather not spend the $15 and just be able to have their dogs off leash. So I'm kind of because there's a lot of nice
So,
dogs
Mayor,
that roam around too.
Mayor, I agree with you that
Yeah.
my dog, I could let her off leash, and yeah, she might not come back to me right away, but she's 0% aggressive. But by having that program, it would make it much easier for us to distinguish. Yes, you are getting the summons because you are not following the city ordinance, and then we won't have that argument of, well, they weren't following it either, and you didn't summons them, and we can easily go down that track. Theirs is in vision and under control. Yours was not. And I honestly I haven't looked at the animal control ordinances fully, but that could be maybe something we would add in there. Or maybe that would even be an amendment we make to the animal control ordinances at a later time if you guys wouldn't want to go with a program like that.
Got it. I want to bring it back to what we're being asked to decide tonight. Do we want to spend 23.6 for a problem that hasn't traditionally been a problem, but seems to be becoming a problem, and puts it distracts staff that's really tasked with doing other things onto doing something they don't normally do, aren't trained to do at times that aren't of their choosing. I personally think it's a bargain. It's not something we're setting on forever. We're start to look at the contract again next year, and I think we can revisit them, but I'm inclined to go ahead. And I think to give Miranda what she needs, we should go around the room now and decide. Are we okay with that?
I want to ask you that, would it possibly be easier for you guys to do so once we get to like the general fund slide? Because that has changed since what was in the packet, because we did receive the final property tax revenue and also added in the additional revenue and expenditure that Sergeant Merriam discussed earlier. So might be helpful to wait, but that's just an idea.
We can hold this.
As long as we need, by the time we're done, you get what you need.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to ask a clarifying question. Is 0.2 the minimum we can engage with? Or is it possible to go to 0.1?
0.2 is the minimum.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next.
Okay,
Back to it.
we'll put a pin in that. We'll come back. All right. But Sergeant Merriam should probably hang around. Okay, moving on. So wanting to talk about some sustainability items. The next slide talks about EV, but we want to put this on your radar too. It's something we need to talk about. The Sustainability Advisory Board recently met with Colorado Car Share, and what's really cool is Colorado Car Share actually has a free electric vehicle that is available to Nederland to use for a pilot program. So what it would be is it's, a car that can be shared, as the name implies. Whereas if you become a kind of a verified driver, you can utilize this car share and kind of pay to use this shared EV vehicle. There is a cost to be a part of the program. It's a minimal cost. It's $6,500, and SAB would like to utilize some of their zero waste funds to do this, which they do have the funding for that. But what it does is it would take one of our level 2 chargers offline because, of course, that vehicle would need to charge there. So it does have a slight impact to revenue. But interestingly enough, you're still looking at an increase in EV revenue. You just potentially could look at more if you didn't have kind of this vehicle potentially sitting there intermittently when it was needing to be charged. And so the reason we're bringing it up before we get to the next slide, I'll move on and we can talk about it kind of as a whole group, is again, sorry, this is the budget, but moving on to the EV chargers. Again, the board had talked about, doing this $3.50 an hour for level 2s, $10 an hour for fast chargers. But Leah met with Matthew Lerman, who's with the City of Boulder Energy Strategy Coordinator, and he really advocated for that kilowatt hour. He said, as I noted, even $10 an hour was hardly going to be a break-even point. So really going at the kilowatt hour is the way to go. If you see, we have the data in the slide talking about, if you're looking at 40 cents per kilowatt hour for level 2, how much we could bring in, it's 116,800. So if we do half of that, and again, that's when the car share is gone, another vehicle can of course charge at the other charger. It's just, really, we just thought, let's just pretend like we only have one charger. We're looking at 58,400, which is still an increase from what we previously proposed to you in other slides. We obviously thought we would be able to install the level 3 chargers. We are sad to report that will likely not happen in 2024. Unfortunately, a meeting with Excel identified that the electrical work they did in that transformer is not robust enough for the chargers that we have. So there was a miss there at some point. And so Excel they can upgrade the electric under their program, so no cost to town, but it's 9 to 12 months for them to be able to do so. So we're not looking at level 3 chargers until likely 2025.
What if we bring a vendor in like Electrify America and have them take care of it? Essentially, they're still going to have to work with Excel.
Yeah, we would break our Excel contract and we'd be on the hook for $116,000 worth of equipment.
Okay, and when does Excel say they can deal with it?
9 to 12 months.
That's not good. Okay.
So
Yeah, it's really
what
unfortunate.
happened, Miranda? They put the wrong transformer in?
Yeah, the electrical that they installed, and then when we kind of went down to me and said, okay, this is a charger we're going to install and that we ordered, we're not sure where the miss happened with Excel, but the electrical that they put in is not robust enough for the chargers that we have. And unfortunately, we already purchased those chargers under a grant. So it's not like we can just return them and start again. So we are now kind of on the hook unless the town wants to buy out of this contract. We need to wait the 9 to 12 months for Excel to upgrade the electrical under their cost before we can install the level 3s.
And the contract just allows Excel to make these kinds of errors without any recourse for the town?
Yeah. I mean, Excel is arguing in many ways that we don't have the staff here to say who misled whom, right? It's like, is it possible that we got a charger that wasn't what Excel agreed to? Is it possible we got the right charger and Excel operated off of wrong information? We don't have any of the old personnel or any records to provide guidance on what happened here. So at this point, all we can do is fix it.
In the meantime, are there other distribution transformers around town that we can plug the things into, even on a temporary basis?
I mean, it's just our level 2 is all we can plug into. We have the level 2s there.
Yeah, the level 2s are going to be there no matter what. Level 3,
Right.
not till 2025.
But I'm saying, is there a distribution transformer somewhere else in town that has the capacity to handle these things even on a 9-month basis so we can get some revenue going and take care of people who need level 3 charging?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I think that's a possible good question to consider and
Sure.
and maybe well, I guess my question was, can we install the level 3 chargers and just juice them for level 2, and then when Excel does
That's
that?
maintenance.
No.
And they don't work that way.
Nope.
Yeah.
So if we install them now, they'll just sit there as bumpers, parking bumpers until Excel does their.
Yeah, we don't want to install them at all just because, we don't want any damage. So we're just going to hold them until Excel can upgrade.
Well, if they could do it in 9 months,
Right.
well, then we could do it.
Right. And so we still have it in the slide. We just didn't budget that revenue. I mean, you're looking at, even when we were thinking half the year, you're looking at $97,000 in revenue. So if you were a third of the year, it's, half of that.
Gotcha.
So yes, we still want to, as soon as we can get them installed, we're installing them and we're charging for them at 50 cents per kilowatt hour. But we're not budgeting any revenue under level 3s because
Right.
that's just such an unknown.
That makes sense.
And so what's the total impact?
So we are budgeting potential revenue of 58,400, which, Rita, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's about $20,000 more than what
20,000
we
more.
brought
Yep.
forward last time.
It was about 30 less than.
I have a question regarding profit. Are you deducing the amount of the electric bill, that the electricity being spent on it?
No, I mean, that's something where it's hard to narrow in because we just get it kind of billed as our whole facility.
Right.
So it's really hard to narrow that in, unfortunately. So yes,
Because,
this
like,
is revenue
it's
and we
not
can't
really
really tell you what the
profit.
expenditure is.
Yeah, it's revenue, okay.
So
Okay,
obviously
yeah,
it's
I
going to
can see
offset,
the
and this is
revenue,
in your
right.
budget. So this is going to offset.
Okay.
So-
It offsets the electric bill somehow, but we don't know exactly if it's even, you were saying that doing it by the dollar basis, we were probably losing money all this time.
Yeah, I don't know,
Um,
Leah, if you're there, she was the one who met with Matthew. I don't know if you can repeat that
Yes.
conversation a little better than me.
So Matthew provided a calculator showing what the energy cost would typically be, and that is why he recommended the per kilowatt hour model in order to at least make up for the electricity we're using and make a profit. So these calculations were based on additional revenue on top of the costs for electricity and also maintenance. But it is a separate item in the budget, so we don't have that exactly. And just for reference, 40 cents per kilowatt hour is on par with Boulder. It's a little high, but that's, typical of, everything in Netherlands is Boulder prices or higher. So it is pretty in line with the market and on the high side so that we can make a profit.
okay, thank you.
So I think really maybe the question before you is, if you talk about this now or in a little bit, is are you okay with the car share program and knowing all the incredible benefits that come from that and understanding that you're potentially taking offline one of the chargers for an undetermined amount of time? Even though it will sit there and it will charge likely overnight more than anything when it's not being utilized.
I'd like
Who-
to add about the car share program. Because there is a free electric vehicle available for us, that is $50,000 that we wouldn't have to spend to get the car share program up here in order to have a pilot program. So without grant funding, we probably wouldn't have this opportunity to have the car share program.
That makes sense. The, yeah, taking the charger offline isn't that big a deal, financially. But who's running I mean, if I wanted, I use those guys down in Boulder, but, I take it, it's the same checkout procedure. Somebody else is managing the car, the same people that own the car are managing the check-in process, the unlock and all of that. All they're asking is that we have, and then how long does this pilot program go on for and what are they trying to determine?
Yes, Colorado Car Share will manage the whole program. And it is roughly a year for the pilot program. They need to make sure that even though it's a nonprofit, that they can cover their costs. And so we're basically splitting the cost right now. It's $6,500 that Zero Waste is providing for some of the administrative and operational costs. And then Colorado Car Share is funding 6,000 of that too. So it's basically splitting the operation cost. If they don't make enough revenue, they actually eat that cost and they accept that risk. But we have about a year to prove that we can have that program succeed up here. And because it's a new market, yeah. But
Great.
they do take care of all of the management. We would help, town staff would allocate some resources in order to promote the program, maybe provide incentives, but the actual management of the program is up to Colorado Car Share.
That's great. What kind of car?
It will be an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive vehicle with a ski rack. Probably something like a Subaru Solterra or similar vehicle. They don't know exactly which one, but something like that.
I'll leave my car at home. That's an upgrade for me. Yeah, I like the program a lot. What do other people think?
I'm without a vehicle myself right now, so I would love to have this available.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's well worth taking up the parking space.
I'm in favor.
Yeah, we discussed this quite a bit in SAB, so it was well received there as well.
Also, I like doing things that our advisory boards recommend, and it's just nice for us to build a little bit of rapport with our advisory boards. And I appreciate hearing a recommendation from SAB, and I relish the opportunity to take it and run with it.
Well, Jessica, I might take animal control back through planning commission then.
So while we're on the kind of sentiment of the Sustainability Advisory Board, I wanted to offer a little clarification on the Sustainability Coordinator. I realized maybe some of my prior slides weren't really clear enough about what's happening with the Sustainability Coordinator under this budget. And so under this current budget, and the budget that kind of has been this way for a bit, is an increase in hours from about 25 to 30, an increase in rate from 25 to 30, which is competitive with sustainability coordinators, transitioning the role to a part-time employee instead of a contractor so the employee can start to build in some benefits, and we're making a move to full-time. The expectation with that 15,000 that we've been receiving year after year is that we transition this role to full-time. And so every year the funder is expecting to see some movement. And so we've increased hours, we've increased match, we've done things. And so this, to me, moving to part-time and increasing hours and pay is just the next step to get that much closer to being full-time. So just wanted to make sure that was understood. And in terms of how are you offsetting the cost of the sustainability coordinator, it's a combination of the two new revenue streams, being the sustainability and permitting fee, as well as the EV charger fee that is helping to offset this increase. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that, and it didn't come, I think it wasn't always clear in that funding stream or how this was working. So that is what Sustainability Advisory Board is advocating for, what as town staff we're advocating for, and that's what is in the budget, is this structure for Leah as your sustainability coordinator.
Agreed. Who are the two funders? You mentioned the funders are in support of it.
The funders being a Boulder County Sustainability Grant. So they're the primary funders who do the match, 15,000 year after year, but eventually we won't be eligible for that funding because the point is that they want to see us utilize it to transition to full-time and not keep it as a contracted position. I think you only get 5 years worth of using this grant for sustainability coordinator, and we're rolling into year 4.
Well, then we'll find some more grants.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in
Understood.
reality, once we can get, if we do have a level 2, we have a level 3, that increases, that all goes to sustainability coordinator. There's a potential that we could have that paid for by year 5 or after year 5.
That's the hope here.
Yep, there we go.
So
Miranda, I have a question about the parking spot.
Yeah.
Is it a free parking then in general? Like as far as we have, if we have paid parking, in general for the lot, if that happens, I'm not saying it's, will those EV spots just be charged for the kilowatt and they're not part of the parking lot system, or are they still part of the parking lot system? Like they have to go to the kiosk and get their parking spot like everybody else and then pay the fee for the kilowatt hours, or are we giving free parking to EV vehicles?
yeah, we weren't going to double charge. I think that was the point of increasing at the time the hourly rate so that it took into consideration that they're paying for that space under the kilowatt hours.
Right. So
Gotcha.
we're charging more to account for the fact that they're also parking.
Correct. So I'd like to turn it over to Rita so you can see how this all comes together, and then you can decide on those kind of 4 items. So Rita, your turn.
Great. Go ahead. Go to the next slide, please. Miranda, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So we did receive an additional payment of sales tax since our last meeting. The 197,666 was received in December, which is for sales tax revenue from back in October. And with that payment, we are now trending at 5.2% higher than at the same time last year. Per the November financials, which are included in your packet, we are trending 6% below in the general fund versus 11% the month before when compared to the budget amounts. So sales tax revenue figures estimates for the 2024 budget have been unchanged since our last meeting, and I recommend keeping that that way to not change any of our sales tax revenue estimates for 2024. Any questions?
No, ma'am.
All right, moving on. Next slide, please. So this slide has changed since what you had seen in the original packet. So we did receive the final assessed valuations, and the assessed net value has changed to 41,644,966 compared to the preliminary assessment, which was 44,479,000. And that caused a decrease to the property tax revenue of $48,969 for a total revenue of $719,375. This is still an increase of 18.2% though when compared to the 2023 figures. So that will affect the general fund, and actually we'll talk about that next. Are there any questions on the property taxes? Next slide then, please. So let me see. Okay, so you do have, all right. So this, what you're seeing here is different. So this is the final with all the changes that Miranda has talked about, and also including the decrease in property tax revenue and the increase that Sergeant Miriam had recommended for extra duty and increased expenses as well for extra duties. So with all those changes, the general fund is operating slightly in the red with an amount of $4,779. And when adding in the capital expenditures and transfers, we end up with a decrease in fund balance in the amount of $186,858. So that that includes all the expenditures changes, all the revenue changes that Miranda had discussed. And again, the PowerPoint we had sent out a week ago, I think it was, did not include, the only thing it did not include was the property tax revenue decrease and the increase of a net of 19,200 between the revenue and expenditures that Sergeant Miriam had recommended today. Any questions on the general fund? So obviously that is looking, I mean, amazing compared to where we were at back in November when we had our last meeting.
What if we don't pass the budget till February? We could be even better.
I don't think we can, sorry. You're funny. All right. And then moving on to really the Parks Fund. So we're only discussing the couple of funds that obviously have changed. As discussed during our last meeting, we moved several line items from the general fund to the Parks Fund. Total amount moved was $21,355, which leaves a fund ending balance of $22,645 in the Parks Fund. And that is the two funds that have changed since we met last.
All right, I've got some good news on fees a little bit. So after going back and just working on kind of finalizing the fee schedule, we learned from the Department of Revenue that they actually had recently passed their own fee schedule that held local jurisdictions to a certain fee amount. And so we had to adjust all of the liquor fees and brought them pretty much all down. So there was an impact. You do see a decrease in revenue for liquor in the clerk's department, but we realigned liquor fees. You also see more in the fee schedule, but it's just because we wanted to make sure we aligned with that state fee schedule. So movement kind of in the direction of lesser fees for liquor license establishments. So what's next? You have to pass your you have to pass your budget on January 2nd. Sure, you have until January 9th. Our hope is January 2nd, which is why we'd love to sort out just these last few things so that Rita and I are bringing you a budget that is ready to vote on and not being discussed ideally anymore on the 2nd.
And I do want to add to that. I mean, the assessor's office, the sooner we can get the mill levy to them, the better. And the deadline for that is the 10th. So really, we wouldn't have much time from the 9th to the 10th, but they would prefer to get those certified mill levies sooner than later.
So I think the biggest thing, again, for you to decide upon, it seems like maybe you're good with car share EV. I think I hear, and it's really animal control, I believe, is kind of your big question area.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I don't think that I'm in the majority on this one, but just to throw out my few things, we've had problems with enforcement of our animal code in the past. So our code is in some cases not enforceable, even as it is, which could cause even more confusion. And we've all experienced this. This was when we were able to enforce it because we had our own PD and they themselves thought that they couldn't do anything about it. Then we also have a pending change to our animal code that we haven't made yet. I feel like it would be nice to know what the code is before we start enforcing it. And then lastly, there are conventions that we've been operating under in town, and those conventions are going to change dramatically, I think, to the point where it might be detrimental to people who live here if we all of a sudden start enforcing code that hasn't been enforced for decades. And I think that that could just be dangerous and that we should know what our animal code is before we start enforcing it.
Speeding wasn't enforced very well before either.
It's true.
But we're dealing, and it's a safety issue just like this. So I respect your point of view. I hear you. But I'll nod differently. But we are, from a process standpoint, we are at the point where we make that decision, right, Billy?
Go ahead,
I mean,
Tanya.
I think, aren't we assuming, and maybe this is where we could have problems, that animal control is really only going to be called in situations where a dog is being vicious? Or are we visualizing this person, you know, like every dog that's off leash, every dog that barks, all of a sudden
We won't be able to
That's
know
my-
that.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
I think
mean,
there's
I
a
don't-
leash law, so they can just ticket or pick up a dog off.
And
leash.
if a neighbor is particularly angsty towards another, member of the community, they might decide to, knowing that there is now animal control officer, just start reporting somebody for something they've been doing for decades, right? Yeah. But I mean, who might have been doing it safely for decades is my point, right?
Well, I don't like how the system is when there is a vicious dog. I think that is a really scary thing. I've had it happen to me, and my dog has been attacked a couple times. And but when there's not an owner around, it's really scary. And even there are owners who just don't even do anything about it. And so I don't know what to do now, because I don't want us to have I don't want it to become, I don't really like what's going on with all these tickets going on either. But I know that's not a popular sentiment either. It's just a revenue generator, it seems, and this is not a revenue generator, I don't think. It's a revenue expense. Well, I'm on the fence. I don't know if we can give direction towards our animal control to, like, hey, just enforce the vicious dog stuff, or is that not allowed?
No, I think they'd have to enforce the code as it's written.
Yeah, but I think practically they're going to deal with vicious animals. I think what I'm really concerned about is the amount of Britt's time that's going into doing this, that's not her primary job. And I'd like to see somebody do it who's trained to do it, who is equipped to do it, and that's their job. And I like to see it happen when there's a vicious dog out there closer in real time so that we can be responsive to
Well,
people
yeah,
that
so we can
deal with
find the
danger.
dog, because like, if you wait 2 days, that dog's, who knows where he is now, or she.
Agreed.
So, and deputies and animal control would still use their discretion.
Yeah.
If it's, a guy walking his dog in the shopping center and the dog's paying attention and it's off leash and there's a code for dog off leash, and we are not going to go harass that person. We understand what the town's mentality is and what the town wants. And then, if the dog is vicious, it'll just give us the ability to move forward with it properly. And you guys mentioned barking dogs, things like that. The way we deal with it in the county, if you get 2 or more complaints, then animal control or deputies will respond. But if it's just the one neighbor who doesn't get along with the other neighbor, and that's the only complaint because maybe there's some other history and they're trying to get back at them, we don't respond when it's just one person complaining. So you do have to have multiple complaints. So there are other safeguards set where it just doesn't become a complaint line.
We still got a lot of ground to cover tonight. Can we make a decision, or is it to that point, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I had something else. I was in the canyon. I mean, I know I'm a 5-1 on this too, but I mean, well, first of all, we'll stick to this and make a decision on this. Then I'll bring up the other thing. I mean, just personally, I'm undecided because I think it's just pushing us in towards a precedent that I, for one, at least, don't want to be sending of just more law enforcement presence. That bothers me more than the money. The money doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it's at the same time, like that last roundabout with those, these 5 dogs in Old Town that one person has under one roof. That came right in, that stress came right into my house through Zoe. So, the vicious dog bothers me, but like everything else doesn't. And then, I think the lack of clarity in our code is a problem, but that's something that we are in the process of clearing up,
Yeah, I mean, I just feel much more comfortable doing this if we had already clarified that code language.
They're both going to be dealt with at the same meeting in January.
Yeah, but that's a discussion. I mean, you're right. But I think we got a ways to go in the keeping animals. I don't think it needs to go back to the PC, but I think
They don't.
like we can have, yeah. And I don't.
So the contract amendment will still need to be voted on. Is that correct, Miranda?
Correct.
We can't vote on that right now,
No, you'd want it.
right? Because we want to see the actual contract amendment.
But we would bring it to you on the day you approved your budget, so.
Indeed. In which case, I guess what I'm saying is you'd bring that to us on January 2nd. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, as a part of the budget.
Okay.
Yep.
The contract amendment would be done by then.
Right. Well, we would approve it and then it would go to county commissioners, of course, but.
Just to clarify timeline.
I mean, have we heard a lot of outcry for people wanting animal control
Fred's gonna have it.
other than these?
It's tense for staff, as the ones who are not giving people the response they're looking for. I'm going to tell you, it's awful on the other end, because our response is we'll get to you when we get to you, or leave a message, or we'll deal with it when code enforcement is here. Again, in your moment of crisis, you don't want to hear from us. And now we're at the place where I will be honest, if there's no animal control, we're sending it to voicemail and we'll deal with it during regular work hours.
And that was the one thing that Tasha called and just said, I mean, they're telling me that there's nothing they can do about it and and that was super frustrating. So I think it's not good for us to put residents in a place where they either get a phone number, they leave a message.
Yeah, but surely we can write citations for people whose dogs go onto other people's properties.
Sure, during regular hours when code enforcement is present.
Right. I mean, we're not
It's only
going out
one
there
day
like hatching dogs.
But it's only one day a week. And so again, but we also don't operate on hearsay. You need to provide us proof. So if on a Monday, you're saying my dog's at large, when we have no proof, by the time code enforcement comes on Thursday, they're not citing you because we have no proof of your call and complaint on Monday, and law enforcement doesn't respond because we don't pay for animal control supports. So again, not often is Jake even able to cite these because at the time in which we're getting the call, it's not, animal issues don't happen on a Thursday during 9 to 5 when Jake's here.
So in the contract, could we write in there, we don't care about the leash law. Just you're hired. We're overpaying you for vicious dogs. Enjoy it and don't bug us otherwise.
I think Sergeant Merriam already addressed it, though. He said, we're going to respect the sensibilities of the town.
Yeah.
So, Miranda, how much does that animal control cost on a per hour basis? It's the 23. Because it's a.
Asa, do you have that breakdown? I don't.
Could we approve the budget and not the contract amendment until a later date, until after we resolve some of our unknowns, like our animal code for one?
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now the increase of 21,000 is just showing up in the Boulder County coverage line. It's not a separate line, it's just an increase of 21,000 or 20, whatever I said.
23.6.
Yeah, it's
so
an
then-
increase in your Boulder County coverage line.
And then Boulder County would have that additional resource available to them in the event that they deemed it necessary to utilize that resource.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it would depend on what specifically your question is. For that 23,000, what's the cost per hour? I mean, obviously that's right around $2,000 a month. And if we broke that down per 24 hours a day, but then if we say the amount of time that animal control is in Nederland and actually responding to calls, I don't think we could come up with that exact price. So I guess I would need more specifics on exactly if you're wanting the price per hour over the year or on the estimated time that they would be in town and dealing with calls.
I think I got to it what I needed to. So basically we had 4 animal response calls last month. This is what was in your report. Let's say, and I'm just saying hypothetical because I don't know, but I'm guessing with administrative time, whether that's town staff time, let's say it's about 5 hours per call that's needed to just either address, respond, do paperwork or whatnot. Let's say that, so that's 20 hours per month at a minimum times 12 in the year. That's about 240 hours. I don't know what the per hour cost is. I was doing an estimate of maybe about $75 or $85 per hour, just based off the police, kind of police time. That gets us to about 20,400. So it's about comparable if we're looking at the per call is about 5 hours of somebody's time somewhere. And that comes out to, and it's probably a lot more than that in some instances. But averaging about or suggesting $85 per hour. So I don't know that the cost is really that much when you think about the time that's necessary to probably address these things. So that's just the point I was making. At the
Good.
same time, I'd be okay deferring this. We don't have any time commitments or restraints. I think that's what you were getting at, Jesse. We don't have any time restraints or anything, Miranda, if we do pause this.
I think just know that I'm making a call now that the animal calls are going to safe build and it'll go to a voicemail. That's a decision I'm going to make because it's not realistic for what's going on with Britt right now. It just doesn't work.
And we'll turn our backs on people who are in need when they need it on something that's a safety issue. So can we make a decision? I know we have a lot of people on the fence.
I mean, I can make a decision. I'm for it, mainly because it gives our local police the ability to act on something so that they can't now because of policy, which is strange, but I think it's probably just to make us get the animal control. So, but that's the system and you can't beat it, so I'm willing to go with it.
Okay, so we have 2 nods.
Maybe I can add, again, Britt is not code enforcement. She provides supplemental supports to code enforcement, and this is not working. So that's why I'm feeling like I have to step in and make the call that it's going to go to Safe Bill. When you call Safe Bill, it automatically goes to a voicemail.
Your timing's super interesting. It's kind of forcing us to make a decision, and it's frustrating, I'll say.
Decisions are frustrating.
Yeah, well, true.
I'm in favor, and I think I have not necessarily an argument, but I will say that Asa, I really appreciate your comments tonight, and if you're still on the call.
Still here.
So, you know, what you said earlier about the voice and site control and having a degree of discretion amongst your officers, and, you know, having a degree of sensitivity to the, you know, the conventions of our town, that gives me a lot of encouragement with regard to our relationship between our community and your staff. And I've never really been a proponent of spending on police in particular.
Overspending it.
Or overspending. Yeah, well, I'm quiet for a second. With that said, you know, when we were making the decision to go with Boulder County, we did have a lot of public input and public participation, and we have a lot of members in the community that really care about this subject, and more so than I do. I feel that we, on world scale, we really are a disgrace with how we're handling justice and correction and the way in which we are correcting bad behavior. We have the highest rate of incarceration, you know, by a factor of 10 per capita, and we're, you know, quote unquote, the land of the free. So I think we have a lot of room for improvement in terms of how we're regulating ourselves. And with that said, we're very much we do it the way we do it, and we are who we are. And so when we chose the path of Boulder County, I really wanted to utilize the passion that we have in our community to establish an advisory board for the police. And because there are so many people who care so much about this subject, and an advisory board, as we know, is just that. It's just providing advice. And, you know, it's a noteworthy moment when we do something that one of our advisory boards recommends, like we did tonight with SAB. So that, you know, we haven't found a way to move that forward. However, I really like that Asa has, you know, shown me that he's very much interested in having a working relationship with us as a community, and that gives me a lot of encouragement, and it really makes me want to invest more and to continue down the path of building a great relationship with Asa and his staff and his officers, and also the move of you know, finding a lot of interest amongst his officers to do the extra duty to generate revenue and to keep our local towns and streets safer. I mean, that is also an indication of a response to something that we were grappling with, generating revenue and keeping our streets safer. And so I don't really feel scared of changing the nature and the fabric of our town by providing this additional resource to really support Miranda and Britt and our staff. So I feel that we should approve this request from Miranda, and I feel that it's okay, and I don't think we should be scared of having some additional animal control. And I think that ASA is going to be responsive to our desires to not have an overly policed town. And I would like for us to find a method of continuing to have a working relationship with ASA and to have a bit more of that very thing, of us having an opportunity to say, hey, we don't want to be overly policed. Hey, I don't want to have to always feel like I got to be watching out when I'm walking through town with my Newfoundland and he's off leash and I'm walking down the block. So I don't know how we can do that. And I would also be in favor of if we could somehow, well, I really don't see a downside, I suppose. I think the only upside is, or the only downside is the money, but the upside is that we're providing support to our town staff and to Brett and to Miranda, and I think we should say yes. That's all.
Real quick, this is Tanya. Response to, I don't know how we can do that. We can do it through the animal ordinance where we can make the code about off-leash dogs and say, hey, we don't care about off-leash dogs as long as they're not posing a hazard, and then have a list of what is the definition of a hazard. We could do that in our animal ordinance code. Right now, it's a very strict code with all these things about your animal off a leash has to be blah, blah, you know, we'll talk later, but we can change that to show that it's not a crime to have an off-leash dog in the town of Ned if he's not a hazard. That's just all I got to say.
There are 3 Neds.
Well, who are they? Me and Tom and Tanya? Or okay, so we need 4 to do anything.
So I suppose you guys will want to
So
hear from me.
That's the 3 over there on that side of the room.
Because I haven't given my indication of
Daggers.
where I'm leaning. So, yeah, I was taking a note from you, Tom. So here's my decision. It will, public safety is number 1. It's one of my number 1s for me. And I would like to see a forcing nature or a forcing hand to get our animal ordinance rectified up to par and just get it done. So I am the 4th nod.
Thanks, everyone. That's some good logic. Jesse,
Make a decision, Billy.
I don't have to.
Oh.
It's beautiful.
Okay, fair enough. Whoever you're talking to, you went to fight for it.
No, I do appreciate, Jesse, your logic. I'm content to not nod right now. So I guess you have the nod of 4.
Was there something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because I wasn't here before. I was in the candy, but I know I've seen a little more dialogue online, you know, about paid parking. I remain against paid parking. I just think it's just not the right message for us to send, and it's optional. And now our budget's looking much better, and so it feels reasonable to at least bring it up. I'm, you know, historically I've been the only person that's not for it. That may still be the case, but you know, I have seen more people speaking out in the public and primarily against it. So I remain against it. If you guys, you know, if it gets at least 4 or 5, it's going to stay in the budget. But I want some real guardrails on it because for the locals, I mean.
When are we going to make those guardrails?
Because for me, you know, I prefer to not see it at all. But if we see it, it's got to be a good thing for locals.
Aren't a lot of the comments on social media about, hey, okay, but if it's a local that's going to park, I want it to be like free for the first 2 hours.
Yes.
Or it's got to be free for locals. So I think there's been that caveat on a lot of those comments.
There's definitely been people that are okay with it. Yeah, but they pretty much, you know, reasonably want something for locals.
And that is built into the plan that we have, is that it'll be free for locals indefinitely. It's not even a time commitment. It's like, if you're a local, you park.
That is how we budgeted.
Yeah, that's how we budgeted in.
That's cool. And I think the other thing that just to keep in mind, you know, Barb's brought up, but I think the reality is, you know, I remember bringing up on the PC 2 years ago when private person wanted to do paid parking, like it's gonna just push people to park on First Street and park wherever, and that's just, that is going to occur, and I want to know what we're gonna do for our part to, work with that. If we're the ones driving people to park in other places with our decision, what are we gonna do to rectify that? Reconcile that?
So is that something you want to discuss right now?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm the only not against paid parking. Is anyone else against paid parking these days?
I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not in
I
love
don't
with it, but when are we gonna be able to have a discussion where we say 30 minutes free for everyone, free for locals? Like, is that gonna
I think in the
happen?
first quarter, like we were still a couple months into 2024, I think even March till we start doing it. So
Okay.
Right, so, but we were gonna bring the proposal kind of as, I broke it out, but as a kind of a part of the budget conversation is that proposal for you to evaluate.
oh,
Okay,
okay.
so I
Great.
think if we do that,
You mean that, like in 2 weeks you'll have that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we wanted to approve kind of the structure and then
Great.
be able to start doing education and outreach in end of January, beginning of February for execution in March as communicated in prior budget conversations.
oh,
That's great. I mean, I'm not gonna hold up the conversation on the budget on this because I think I'm the only one who's really against paid parking, but it'd be good to know the terms before we approve it. Budget.
I'd like to make one other recommendation for the budget if you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my own.
Okay. One of the things, and I get it, this is kind of last minute, in just taking a look at staff time and how staff dedicates, and there's a lot of manual process that's still happening. And I would love for the team and the staff and Miranda to be able to start experimenting with AI tools going into 2024. They are moving into Microsoft and the 365, and part of the tools that they can purchase is a Copilot, which is Microsoft Copilot, which is their AI. It will allow meeting minutes to save production probably, or productivity by 60%, some of my estimates, and also start to introduce a little bit of AI fluency and into the staff team. And while it's $30 per seat, not everyone on staff has to receive that, but for the managers, and I think also for a lot of the folks at the town hall, I would like to see them be able to access those tools. And so I would love for us to be able, so Miranda, I was estimating a head count of 10 people potentially between town staff and managers.
There's 9 division heads, department, with myself, 10 of us, so yeah.
So 10.
Yep.
At $30 per person, I'd love to be able for them to access that tool.
That's
So
$30 per person per month.
$30 per person per month. Yeah. So it comes to about, what is that? 36. Yeah, it was 3,600. So I'd love for us to consider $3,600 into the budget for them to access those tools.
I'm sorry, it's 36 for the year.
For the year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for the year for all 10 division heads. 3,600.
this seems a little last minute right now. We have 20 minutes to go for the meeting.
Yep, understood.
I mean, yeah, I'd be for it. I'm not going to deny them something that I use myself all the time to get my own work done.
Constantly, right? I mean, how much would you say are you using those tools as a part of your job?
Every day.
It's like probably 70 to 80%.
70 to 80% of, well, I mean, small amounts, but every day. And it's for annoying things that,
right?
Yeah, that otherwise would take me more time.
No.
I think maybe I can add, so when I was talking to Trustee Sterling about this, obviously the conversation was Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence kind of, or AI, and I think I really feel like it should be an and. Our team does really like what Rocky Mountain Performance is offering, but we don't want to have to pick and choose, and so that by increasing that line item, you give us the opportunity to utilize these tools and integrate them into what Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence is doing, and they're happy to draft a scope of work that highlights the use of these tools.
And I would also be there to help support as well in terms of training and just getting folks, comfortable with it. Originally, I wanted to propose 10,000 to get some automation going, but I think this is just a low risk. Let's get folks comfortable. Let's show the productivity gains that we can get from doing like just the stupid stuff, right? Like you were saying, Eric. So I get it. It is a last minute ask. I almost wasn't going to ask, just because of the way the budget was in, but, with it getting better from the weeks before, I am making the ask.
I'll give a nod. Just for sake of time, I'd say yes to that.
What I would ask is that we just direct it back to Miranda to go to our IT vendor and just see what's the best they can do with our Microsoft license, and get the best price possible. And then drop it in the budget and tell us what it was.
Oh, well, I can tell you online, it's $30 per person. And so if it comes in under that, awesome.
Yeah,
But I think you should budget for worst case scenario like we usually do.
sure. Okay, that's fair.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and I'm glad you asked, and I'm okay with it.
Thank you.
What else is undecided?
Got what you need for budget?
Rita, are you good?
Yes, I'm good. So just so everybody knows, then the general fund, the slide you saw tonight that Miranda presented, that's what it'll look like on January 2nd. Plus I'll include most likely that $3,600. So we will be at a change in net asset at a decrease of $190,458. So I just want that to be clear that that's what we're hoping to pass on January 2nd.
That's the right closing question, Rita. Well done.
Understood.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we are going to decide if we're going to go with our next informational item or not, I think. Discussion item.
Did we get public comment on budget?
No.
Correct. Public comment on our budget discussion, and we will be talking about it again in 2 weeks as well. But there's no one in the room, so if you have a comment, go ahead and start talking. If not, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you.
So in recognizing, so the reason the Tourism Advisory Board was before you is we're in the Destination Blueprints program with Colorado Tourism Office, and they did ask us to put forward some items in 2023 kind of as a part of our commitment in that program, in acknowledgement that we really would like you to get to all of your action items if possible. Peter and I can go back to CTO and just tell them, unfortunately, due to time, we didn't get to it tonight, and bring that back to you in February unless there's desire to discuss that. But then our ask would be that you extend your meeting till 11 p.m. to do as many of these action items as you possibly can.
I'm done.
10:30,
I'm
I
done.
can't do 11.
Well, it is, go ahead, Tom.
I can.
I can too. I mean, it's the last meeting for the end of the year, and there's just a push on some of these things for action items, and we would move this discussion item, which I think is reasonable, to February.
Correct. Because the first two meetings in January are already booked, so this tourism would come back to you in February. And also, I know it's a little premature, but the Rights of Nature team, while they're sitting online, I think they're open to moving that and asking. I'd like to let them know now, if you're going to move Rights of Nature, that decision also maybe be made sooner than later, so they don't sit around.
That's fair.
We should move it because we'll need the other hour plus for just the other three things, frankly.
Attorney Madsen, well, they're not like public hearings. Do they need like a motion to move it, or can it just be moved?
You could just move it. You don't need a motion.
Tentatively, the Rights of Nature and the Tourism Advisory Board would move to February 6th.
Sounds good.
All right. Let's do this.
So that would go into our first action item in the evening, the 6.1.
Well, I'd like to move to extend the meeting
Oh, yeah, smart.
to 11 PM.
I'll second that. That was the ask. That was just made it. We'll use it. And you get 2 weeks, 2 weeks of sleeping off, dude. I'll second it.
Mayor Billy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold?
Yes.
Trustee Severs?
Okay, fine.
Trustee Corbin?
No.
Trustee Sterling?
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes.
Awesome. Now I can focus. Thank you so much. Well done. Eric, 6.1, 2024 municipal election process review.
Just want to quickly thank Peter, Rich, Alan, Leah for hanging out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
See
you.
Yes, thank you.
you.
Thanks. Thanks, Rich and Ellen. You've been very patient for many months now.
Okay, so Macy's on vacation, so you get me for this one, but normally she will present this. Just wanted to give you kind of, it's almost election time, so let's talk through some things and have you vote on some resolutions. Your next municipal election is April 2nd. At that election, there are 4 trustees with terms ending. It's Mayor Billy, Trustee Coombs Ismail, Trustee Severs, and Trustee Sterling. And if you opt to appoint for your current vacancy, that trustee's term will also end. Otherwise, you're a board of 6 and you have a vacancy. So you're looking at 5 positions altogether on the ballot, 1 mayor and 4 trustees. Every year, the Colorado Revised Statute gives the board the ability to delegate its authority to have someone serve as a designated election official. That is typically the town clerk. In that role, the town clerk will run the election and be given the authorization to appoint election judges. Obviously, Macy Caligaris is your town clerk. She's run 3 elections, supported me with 1. She's very well versed in running elections and will do a fantastic job serving as your designated election official. So one thing we're asking you to vote on tonight would be Resolution 2023-52, which does designate Macy, the town clerk, as your designated election official, and again gives her that authority to appoint your election judges. That resolution also calls for a mail-in ballot election. So the Board of Trustees can determine if the town should hold a mail-in ballot election. That's how we've done it to date. We do feel that it allows people to participate. The alternative is a polling location election, but mail-in ballot typically does generate more involvement because people can drop off their ballots at town hall or the community center. So that's a part of that resolution you'll be voting on tonight. Just to kind of review the process, when we look at nomination petitions, we will release those on Tuesday the 2nd at 9 a.m. and they're due by Monday, January 22nd by 5 p.m. Those would be turned in to the town clerk. So we'll release those nomination petitions on our website. If someone has an intent to be a write-in candidate, they would need to file an affidavit, and they have until Monday, January 29th to do that. Starting on Wednesday, January 3rd, someone can request for an absentee ballot, and then they have until the end of March to do so. So we'll continuously provide you AIMS once a month that updates you on what's happening with elections. We need no more than 10 to 15 minutes, but we like to put on every agenda just some sort of quick election update. So those are some of the key dates coming up in January we wanted you to be aware of. So really the question before you, and the only thing we need you to decide on tonight is, do you approve Resolution 2023-52, setting the election as a mail-in ballot and designating the town clerk as the election official for that election?
Please explain more about this affidavit. What is the current process for writing candidates?
So they have to file an affidavit to be considered for a write-in candidate, in which we would add a blank line on the ballot for them to have their name written in, versus the alternative is that you circulate a nomination petition, you get your 10 signatures, and then your name is on the ballot.
What's the current policy on it? Why is this on here now?
So that's always been a part of Colorado Revised Statute. I'm not sure I understand the question.
So we had a conversation about this a few meetings back, and I thought that it wasn't part of Colorado Revised Statute. Thought that's what we landed on.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Forgot about that. Attorney Madsen?
So what the Colorado Municipal Election Code provides is that the governing body of a municipality may provide by ordinance that no write-in vote for any office shall be counted unless an affidavit of intent has been filed with the clerk by the person whose name is to be written in prior to 64 days before the election. So essentially, there needs to have been an ordinance passed by the town to require that write-in affidavit. And I believe that that did happen, but I'm going on memory here that there was, well, I think that there was an ordinance passed, again, like I said, I'm going on memory, but it wasn't codified. It wasn't part of the code. Miranda, do you remember if that's the case?
No, I think I need to, we've got time. I think we can come back to you on January 2nd. I don't want to spend too much time having a conversation about election code off of purely
Right.
speculation.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what I
I
would
just,
ask is the ability to come back to you since that write-in, since the current date is further into January. Let us come back to you on the 2nd with clarification.
And,
Just-
and the resolution, just to be clear, the resolution doesn't address this at all. So
Right.
you're not voting on this tonight by approving that resolution.
well, I don't want to vote on this with the affidavit for the write-in candidate for Monday, January 29th.
So that's not what's in the resolution. That's just what's in the aim. The resolution is specific to your designated election official being the town clerk, and that this is a mail-in ballot. It's just what's
Why
in
is
the
that
aim.
on the aim?
It is on the aim.
Why is the affidavit section on the aim?
So we
Just
just,
information on the process.
yeah, we just took the election calendar and did kind of a copy and paste of the election calendar, but you are right. Did not kind of consider that this was a previous conversation. It was just a copy and paste from the election calendar.
Yeah, we had a big conversation about this.
And I'm sorry that's in the aim.
No, it's all right. My general feeling on this is that we don't have this provision in our code because it's almost exactly at the same time that you would get signatures for petition. Like, I think we should be able to write people in
Yeah, just keep a
without
blank
that person
line.
having an affidavit on
Yeah,
file.
I
I think
agree.
Keep a
anyone should
blank
be-
line on the ballot. And if anyone wants to write anybody in, they should be able to do so.
I think we're a small enough town that that is reasonable. And the
Well,
fact that it's so close to the petition deadline makes write-ins basically irrelevant at this point.
Yeah, I
Agree.
agree with Eric. This is what we talked about in the last time we talked about this.
Yeah.
Agree. That being said,
And so we need to find
any
out. if
clarifying
we made
questions on the
amendments.
question? Are there any clarifying questions before we go to public comment on the question at hand, which is whether we're going to approve Macy as town clerk, as election officer, and then go with mail-in ballots? Any clarifying questions? If not, we'll go to public comment, and there's no one in the room. So Kathleen, your hand's up. You can go ahead.
Hello?
I can hear you, or we can hear
Yeah,
you. Go.
Kathleen Chafai. I'm against mail-in ballots because the year we ran the recall, I used the same mail list as Miranda, and when we normally had 300 to 400 voters, 400 being a lot in an election, like over 900 people voted, 890 or something. So I think if people want to vote, they should have the opportunity to walk into town hall, show their ID, get a ballot, and leave with it. And that's the only way you should be able to get a ballot. If you want to be able to turn them in early, that's fine. I think that's a fair way to do it because at this point, also in that recall that I mailed out, using the same list Miranda used for the election, I was returned unavailable to give to sender over 270 on the list, and Miranda said she only got 42 returned to her. So I'm going to actually request that we keep track of what the post office gets back and hands in as unreturned votes. And then everything that was just said about, I can't even believe the gaslight about the affidavit. No, the law, they tried to get you to pass it in April, and you guys had a huge discussion, and it's in the April 4/18/23 packet. You can watch the video. It's a lengthy discussion. You were misinstructed that it was necessary. then I called in and said it wasn't. And then Eric got on the computer and said, no, it wasn't. It says the word may. She just read the word, the town may do this. And you all ended up agreeing after a lengthy conversation with everyone's input that that was not how it was. You didn't want to have a requirement because how many people get written in Nederland, and what's the problem? So the gaslight, Jen Madsen, Ordinance 729, yes, it was passed. It already contains language. It's a 20-day affidavit, but I have been asking for years why that says on Muni Code that it passed and it's recorded with Boulder County, but it says omit in the table, the supplement table. It says omit, and I've been asking for 4 years. And it's so funny to me that, Jen, you were tonight going to reference that as if it exists, just to get people to have to fill out an affidavit. It's outrageous. Because what about the language that really does exist in 177 on trustees and terms and vacancies? You know, it's funny how we pick and choose what language that's supposed to be in the code we're going to choose when and who it gets used on. It's disgusting, to be quite honest with you. And I'm directing that at the town attorney and the town administrator and not this board. And I'm sorry to say it.
Thanks, Kathleen. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
Well, haven't we always done mail-in ballots, or at least for the past 5 years or so?
Since COVID.
So before that, we went in and did it?
Really?
Since
I
I've been here, they've been a mail-in ballot.
Yeah, it's been mail-in as long as I can remember. But I mean, and I could be incorrect. but I mean,
Colorado's big on mail-in, like for president and all that. I do remember going at the town hall and voting for, like, Fix-It when he ran for mayor. That was a really long time ago. Well, I'm okay with mail-in ballots. I know people think they're not good, but I think they're easy.
I move to approve resolution 2023-52, setting a mail-in ballot election and designating the town clerk as the election official for the April 2nd, 2024 election.
Second.
Trustee Sterling,
Yes.
trustee Severs,
Yes.
Mayor Billy,
yes.
trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold.
Yes.
So, Miranda, are you gonna look into if we have an ordinance that mandates the affidavit, and then if we don't have it, we're not gonna require it at all, or? what's
Correct, yeah.
the-
We'll bring you every meeting an election update, and so we'll provide that on January 2nd, that clarification.
Okay.
Thank you. With that, we'll go on to our next action item, which is amendments, 6.2 amendments to election sections of the Ned Municipal Code.
I think Attorney Mattson could read this one.
Thank you. I can't open any PDF, so I can. Go ahead. Jennifer.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. This is Jennifer Madsen, your. And before you tonight is ordinance 840, which is an ordinance repealing and replacing sections of the Nederland Municipal Code related to elections. This item has been before you on several occasions. Most recently, it was before you at the November 28th meeting. The only change to the draft ordinance between November 28th and the meeting tonight is an additional section, which is section 2-5. And that section addresses the situation that you all referred to last time as the Julian Taylor problem. And essentially what that section does is it mandates that if a vacancy is created by a trustee being elected to a mayor position, then that the vacancy is filled through the election, essentially. If there's a candidate who did not win the trustee role, then the board would fill that vacancy by the trustee candidate who did not win. But it's only under certain circumstances. And that is if the difference between the lowest candidate who was elected into office and then the next candidate who was not elected into office, if the difference in votes between those two people is 10% or less of the total votes cast, then that's when you would be required to appoint that losing candidate. I have an example for you that I put together that I think might be helpful to go through for you to see how this would all work based on the last election. Miranda, can I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
Okay, can you all see that?
You just have to, can you zoom?
Yeah.
Keep going, keep going. Yep, keep going. Even more. There you go. That's good.
Great. So here are the votes from the last election, votes that each person received. Julian Taylor was elected into the mayor position. These next numbers here, next candidates are for the trustee position. The ones that were highlighted are the trustees that were elected for the trustee office. There were 1,356 total votes cast. So 10% of that number is 135. And Tanya Corvalon received 229. She was elected into the trustee position. David Seitz was the next candidate with the highest number of votes after trustee Corvalon. He received 167. So you take the difference between Tanya Corvalon and David Seitz. That number is 62. So because 62 is less than 10% of the total votes cast, then under this draft section 2-5, Seitz would need to be appointed to that vacant trustee spot.
I think that's way too high of a number because someone could have gotten 40 votes and be inside that time frame. I think it needs to be 10% of that lowest of Tanya's 23 votes. It needs to be within 23 votes. I think 10% of the whole is way too big.
So if somebody got 40 votes, then we change these numbers. So if someone got 40, then that would be
189.
189. And so 189 is greater than 10%.
I'm
So that
sorry,
person,
I picked a bad number, but say someone had 100 votes. I mean, I just think that's a huge spread, 135. I mean,
I think 100 votes wouldn't have passed the mustard either. How many people voted in the last election?
I
well,
just think
it's not
10%
the
of the
number
whole
of
is too big.
people, it's the total votes cast.
Yeah, total votes cast, not necessarily ballots
What
that
is that?
were entered.
Total votes cast.
That's just it's way too big of a number.
Total votes cast. What does that mean? Like how many votes?
That means that someone could have
So what is the 10% of
100
that?
someone could have
number?
90 votes and after your 229, which would be 139 different, Oh, I keep doing this because I'm gonna have 100 votes. Let's put that 100 votes. Be
How many votes were
129 off
cast?
yours and still get in. It just seems way too.
Well, considering,
Yeah, no,
I
it's
mean,
too big
if
of a
you think
number.
about the fact that, they got all those votes, well, what's the number then? 5%? I mean, it needs to be a little bit of a leeway because people weren't instructed to vote for 6 people, I mean, I'm happy with this potential the way it is, except I would want to add not just for a vacancy from the mayor, but a vacancy from a trustee resigning in this same time period of, I don't know, is it 100 days? Because that would also give us a big problem right away too. If I decided to resign in the middle of March, and then that leaves, first thing everybody has to do is fill my spot, if there were a candidate there that's got a lot of votes, I think we should add that also in there. What other people think about the 10%?
I just 10% is fine. I just think not 10% of the whole. I think that's just a huge number.
10% of what? The amount of ballots
The
cast?
sum of those 6 numbers, the total votes cast. I mean, I personally think they need to be close to the last, to the person that got voted in with the least amount of votes. They need to be within, in my opinion, 10% of that number. It needs to be close to the person who got the least amount of votes. They could be, 100+ votes off. Someone could be way off in votes and end up in office. I don't think that's,
10% of what are you saying? I mean, we just got to figure out a way to write it.
10%. So are you looking at this presentation?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
So 229, 10% of that. So
Oh,
23
no, I'm not
votes.
looking at the presentation here.
Okay, well, I'll tell it to you. So
Okay, no, I'm looking at it now. Okay, yeah.
So you had 229 votes. So you were elected. And to me, it needs to be someone that's right behind. And I think 10% of what you got would be, to me, a
So
reasonable
like 20,
difference. 23
votes.
Yep.
So I agree that it's too much. Sorry, Nicole.
What about 10% of ballots cast?
I mean, I agree that it's too much because I think the point here is to say that we want to make it mandatory for the board to appoint somebody who was not categorically rejected by the voter. Right. So we need to be sure that this person is someone that the voters basically said, we want you to be a trustee. You missed out by a few votes, right? Like that's basically unlucky, right? Comes down to like a few people not recognizing your name and not voting for you rather than a large swath of people categorically rejecting your candidacy. So I think that with such small numbers of votes that we get, 200, 300, right? 135 is way too big of a number. That would represent someone who was categorically rejected being appointed. And I don't think that's what the intention here was. I think that 10% of 229 is nice, but I would be happy to go with 20% of that number, so something in the range of like within 40 votes, of the next highest vote getter. So, I mean, I'd be willing to compromise on it if people wanted to, but I like 10%.
I get it. I'm good with that.
I mean, because this is the thing. Nothing precludes a board from simply appointing the next highest vote getter anyway, right? We're not stopping anybody from doing that. They can just do that. So even if they're 135 behind, that board can decide, you know what? You ran, good on you, you're appointed. But I don't think they should be forced to do that.
Right. Which
Okay.
was a situation
Right.
that you guys had
Right.
when my appointment came up. You could have just brought in the person that had the next highest votes. That was a situation. That was a decision point. So at 20%.
What's the number we want to lock in on?
Well, so just for giggles here, if it was 20% from Tanya, from your votes, 229, that would have meant that we needed somebody with 185 votes. So just to give like the range, right? So that's at 20%. And then of course the 10% was the 229 times the 10%, which is minus 22. So it would have been 27. Well,
200
rounded up 20,
207.
23 if you're gonna round up,
or
which
20,
is
yeah,
most people would do.
206.
Yeah.
So either 206 versus about 185. That's the range that we're talking about. Okay. So we can
Why
split
don't
it
we
down the middle
say
and do 15.
15%?
I
Yeah.
like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sure.
What's that?
You just split it down the middle and say 15%.
Yeah, and Tanya just said it, and I think tight. I think it needs to be
Yeah.
pretty tight,
Yeah.
personally.
Well, what do you guys feel about adding language that it's not just the mayor? It could be a trustee who resigns in that period of where it's too late to get the name on the ballot. Another, it's too late to say vote for 5 instead of 4.
So you're saying someone that votes right before an election, someone that resigns.
Like I
right before
resign
an
in March, just to really just be a jerk to everybody. I'm just gonna like
I mean,
resign in March, and then you guys aren't even gonna have that space on the ballot.
Oh.
Right? And
Then we
so
just
now you're
appoint.
forced to appoint because the language is just for mayor.
But that's not terrible.
yeah, I
don't-
think you just,
really understand.
I
what's
think you just
broken.
appoint there.
Yeah.
I don't really just don't know what's broken here, and I don't
But
know why we're trying to fix something.
It kind of happened though.
It's
Kinda
broken.
happened
You
right
weren't there.
before
we
It
have
was
them, but we
broken.
appointed and we got through it.
We didn't get
have
through
the
it that
appointment
easily.
Mechanism. It's there.
But-
We
but-
can use it.
All right, I'm gonna resign in March, and you'll see how you like that.
Okay, go ahead.
No.
Tanya, don't do that.
I don't want you to, but
We'll appoint you in April.
I don't.
Yeah, we'll just appoint you.
Yeah.
I won't.
So I think there was a desire, because your question of what's broken here. Yes, the board always has the opportunity to appoint in the situation where it's so close. I think like what you're talking about, Eric, is like, okay, as long as they're not categorically denied, is it just, and I guess we have to ask the question, is it smoother policy making? Is it easier on behalf of the board to just say, oh, you, number 4, you're in, I think that's ultimately what's up for decision here.
Appointment is appointment.
Yeah, but how fun is it? We're about to have to do it again and again and
It's
again,
super
and it's
fun.
time
I really
consuming.
enjoy it.
I don't like it.
I don't.
I don't
it's a
like
voice
going to 11 o'clock meetings.
I
but
don't
I'm
either.
here, and I enjoy the board. I enjoy this whole BOT process. We make decisions.
Well,
So
yeah,
for me, it was all about the idea that like when somebody is on the board, right? Then, and they decide that they want to run for mayor, right? There's this like weird thing that happens that doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially in this situation where we had someone running for mayor unopposed. We knew that vacancy was going to be
and we
created.
also
and
knew-
we were powerless
we also
to do anything about it. So I like changing it for this mayor upgrade situation,
an
right? Where
edge
someone
case.
goes from trustee to mayor.
Yeah.
I think in every other situation, it's just appointment or.
And let's extrapolate that in the Julian Taylor situation, not only did he run for mayor, but then he resigned, and we knew he was going to resign before the election even happened. We knew it in February. So it was just, we knew there was going to be 2 spaces available. So, what, I have another thing I want to bring up if people are done talking about this part.
Go.
What about doing this the way that Kathleen was suggesting we do it in the proper administrative format, where we, repeal the, wait, let me find the number. My computer's spinning. We put the ordinance 177 to the Muni code, and then we bring it back, amending the original ordinance that never got that got lost. There's such a messed up history to all this that we're ignoring that. We're just pretending it didn't happen, that we have a code in town hall that isn't in the Muni code. And why don't we just do it the way the process is supposed to be, and then we can just repeal that right away and put this one in?
I mean, it just sounds like an entirely unnecessary process to me. I mean, we're not repealing an ordinance. We're repealing whatever code currently exists, whatever code currently exists.
Right.
Regardless if it was ordinance 177 or a more recent one.
So it's just an extra bureaucratic step that doesn't actually accomplish anything other than doing more work.
And I look at it exactly like that. Yes, we could go either one of these two routes. Which one is more administratively, we can get the job done. It's not an extra step or whatnot. I think we arrive at the same place here regardless.
Right. We categorically arrive at the same place because we're repealing code, whatever code exists, and replacing it with this. Whether that code is challenged or not doesn't actually matter.
Right.
We're repealing whatever code exists and replacing it with this.
Yeah. And I mean, it sucks that we can't find, that code book from 1996. None of us were here in 1996, nor were we recently to where, this code was disappeared.
Or staff, or town staff.
Yeah. And, it's like, yeah, I hate to admit that. That's awful. And, I hate it. And at the same time, it's like, okay, what can I do today? What can we do today to just rectify the situation and get things cleaned up and moving forward? That's how I'm looking at it.
Agreed. I think there is one thing that, Kathleen had a suggestion about. I like the wording, shall be elected to fill the unexpired term or terms versus those last words, shall be elected to 2-year terms, because if someone, that seemed to be the situation. I think and I'm reading it off the email.
I like that too.
Because to me, that did make sense. Like you had the challenge of people get voted and we count sworn in. And then, there's this one seat that's still available. And then they get sworn in like a month later. And then the way the code reads, it shall be elected to 2-year terms. And that was apparently a concern. So, and I'm having I apologize. I can't open PDFs. So I'm trying to do all this off emails because for some reason I can't open Adobe right now on my computer. But the section 2.4, 4-year term for trustees, if you read and I'm assuming Kathleen, put that in her email as it's written, and I apologize, I can't reference it, but it's the last words in it are shall be elected to 2-year terms. And I think that was potentially a sticking point with an appointment after terms had started, was like that person would randomly go beyond an April election.
Yeah.
But the old ordinance 177 language is shall be elected to fill the unexpired term or terms. That seems clean.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Because
I don't.
2-4, when it says the 2-year, to serve a 2-year term, that's when the fourth highest vote from the election gets put into place.
Right.
And so it is an automatic 2-year term.
Yeah. Like that wouldn't.
It wouldn't apply to an appointment.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to appointment at all.
Okay.
It says this section is not intended to control appointments made by the board of trustees, right at the end.
In 2-4.
I don't actually have that version.
Okay, so if you look at the aim in 2-4.
I can't open a
Oh,
fucking
no,
PDF.
I'm sorry. Here, take that.
Thank you.
No problem.
I swore. Okay, I mean, if it's definitely just going to happen in line with the election, I'm fine with it, but I am wondering, I mean, I guess if I'm just trying to look at the examples we've had recently,
And if it wasn't appointment.
Julian, Jonathan, I mean, these random.
I just don't think that would be affected by this language.
Because they do take on the remaining term.
The remainder
Right?
of
So
the
I
term.
took on Jonathan Baumhover's remaining term because I'm an appointment.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And that way it all lines up with the election,
And yeah.
no matter what, like there won't be any.
So if it's an appointment, someone resigns or moves or, I guess, the situation was he didn't resign though, and Julian didn't resign until he was sworn in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't matter
And
when
then
he resigned.
that was the whole sticking
Yeah,
point.
the term that anyone would take on
Okay.
if they were appointed to that position would be the remainder of his term.
It's not actually the remainder
I'm-
of
Oh,
the
he has a
term.
4-year term.
It's only going to be until the next regular election.
Ah, right.
Maybe
even to
that's
the
how
next
it should be
election. Yeah.
stated, yeah.
But so 2-4 only applies to regular elections and people who are elected. It does not apply to appointments.
Right.
And it
Okay,
allows
great.
for the staggered terms. That's why 2-4 is in place, is to provide for staggered terms.
Yeah, if it weren't there, then we wouldn't have staggered terms and everyone would just be elected on the same cycle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Any more clarifying questions? If not, we'll go to public comment. There's no one in the room, so if you're online and have a comment, feel free to share. Kathleen? I know this is a hot button issue, but let's stay constructive with our comments. Go ahead, I can't hear you yet. We can't hear you yet.
Hello.
We can hear you.
If I have, well, my comments are what you're changing doesn't change anything different. It doesn't solve any problems. And I believe you're all wrong when you say we administratively can just override the fact that we didn't follow what the code said in the last election, and we're just going to pretend it didn't. The appropriate terminology to protect everyone in a general sense would be to the original language from 177, which the mayor just shared. And when it comes to the percentage of votes, I don't understand what the problem is. Any votes is more votes than an appointment of someone who didn't get any votes at all, that didn't even run or put themselves out there. You guys already had the opportunity to appoint in 2022. You could have appointed David Seitz and Riley to those open positions. You could have also, and like I want to correct the comment that I believe I was misquoted tonight, a misapplied comment by Jesse. Yes, I believe that the board can appoint the mayor pro tem to be mayor. I don't have any problem with that. I think that's what should have happened. But the reason everything was delayed is because this board chose to throw another election. Why did you choose to think that? You chose to do that because you were told by the town it was unprecedented, had never happened before. Those were all lies, okay? That was misinformation. Okay, that's why you chose it. And you want to vote on things. You want the people to vote on things. That's nice. You were misadvised. You chose not to appoint those people. Julian Taylor was calling them losers. Losers. They got more votes than anybody else. Nobody else even applied themselves and ran. So I don't believe there should be any stipulations. The percentage is outrageous, if you ask me, because this. How many times is the board open? Take advantage of the election votes that somebody gets if there's an empty seat on the day of the election or before the election. Why would you ban any of those people? We need those people. We need the people that are interested. We don't call them losers and decide I disagreed with the vote to have an election right after the election. It's outrageous. It wasted 3 months. So that's how I feel. I don't feel that anything you're changing right now is doing any good. And you're not repealing ordinance 177 because that's not the language in the code right now. So, and this is a repeal and replace. That's what it says. Okay. So you're not repealing the language in ordinance 177 because it's not in the Muni Code. So it will still exist. And we'll figure it out after that, I guess. I guess it's going to take someone to take you to court over the foundational documents. And you don't need the 1996 code or any code. If there was an ordinance passed that changed the language in 177, it would be in town hall, signed, stamped, published. We would have it all. We have nothing because there was no language
Thanks, Kathleen.
change legally in 177. And if you want to look
thank
at
you.
in the other thing, it's ordinance 729.
Or 3 minutes or.
Come on, Billy, you let Kayla talk for 7 minutes and stuff like that, and back to
Not
format.
recently, I haven't.
Just the last meeting.
Okay, go. Well, no, I mean, I don't think I did this last meeting, did I?
Well, not this one, but it was a back and forth. She asked questions, we answered.
Okay, well, if that were to happen, sure.
Tanya, if you ask Kathleen some question, then you can give her more time that way.
Yes.
Oh, is that how it works? Okay. Well, I can ask Kathleen a question, then I go, Kathleen, what else were you gonna say?
Oh, she's listening. Well played.
That is
Tanya.
technically a question.
Yeah,
A lot
3 minutes to say it.
Mad respect, Tanya. That was solid.
Thank you. I don't think she's even there anymore, though.
She's still logged into the meeting. Are there any other public comments while we're waiting? There you are.
Tanya.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I have to go outside so I can hear, and I walked in hearing that Tanya wanted to ask me a question, so I had to run back outside and
My question was just like, what were you going to say next?
Well, I'm just going to say that I believe that procedurally, to make things lawful, and I guess I have 2 questions. What is the legal argument into pausing on this and not passing this? This doesn't affect the next election whatsoever. So I want to know what the legal urgency is and what the legal argument is against doing it appropriately, which is the language from 177 should be sent to Muni Code, and they should be told, hey, this is missing. Can you please add it to the Muni Code? And then you actually discuss the actual language that is supposed to be in the code. Right now, you're discussing language that has no legal history of being added to the code, okay? And the tone and the tenor was confused in the illegal language versus the legal language. So I want to know from the attorney the legal arguments against postponing this and against putting the language that's supposed to be there in 177 back in and then starting over, because nothing in this that you're doing today changes anything about the next election. And the ballot, we have enough time. We know the ballot needs to say pick up to 5. So we're safe there. So those are my 2 questions, I guess, for the attorney.
Well, okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Tanya, do you want
Tanya.
answers to those questions?
Oh, I was gonna say it is solving one thing, maybe, is if Tom runs for mayor, I don't know if he's planning on it or not, and wins, that vacancy could get filled by the next person who's running. So that would solve that.
You guys can do that right now. You can appoint them.
Well, it would solve it instantly without a whole 3
There's
meetings.
nothing. I gave you guys in a letter 3 other year meetings out of the last 4 minus 22 where they appointed on the exact same day. They took their oath right after everyone else took their oath. Nothing has changed in the code language from what happened in 2014, 2016, or 2018.
Well, I don't see this board appointing without a bunch of discussions. But
Why would you have to discuss it if you're right now trying to make it so that if one of the next person
Oh,
in
I see
line
what you're saying.
I mean, if there are 6 people running, you know what I'm saying? If Tom really does
Yeah,
run
but
that way,
the
and
last
gets
board,
there.
the last board didn't choose to do that. So it's just really a variable, isn't it? So
Well, do you want to take away the power of the board to appoint the day everyone takes their oath, or somebody who came? I mean, you have that option right now. Somebody that got votes. Do you want to take away that right and mandate it? Because you guys had the option, you went and voted. So what this vote does is it takes away the option of the BOT at the time to call an election for that one seat, for the mayor, if it happens. Only for that seat. This doesn't address when there's vacancies at other times.
Thanks, Kathleen.
I mean, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, I guess, to avoid what happened last
The
time.
board's right? Is that what you're trying to do?
I mean, I
Limit-
guess last time I thought you were contending that we didn't have the right to do that. And now
No, never
saying
have I said
we
that.
do.
Mm-mm.
Well, so then we
Never.
didn't do anything wrong last time by not appointing David Seitz.
No,
Nothing-
the
nothing
thing
wrong
that
was
I
done.
disagreed with, I'm not saying it's wrong. You guys voted that way. I
Okay.
disagreed because we knew we had 2 empty seats for a minimum of 4 to 5 months. And that's what I disagree with. I mean, when people start out the year after an election, I mean, on the day of the election, you don't expect that you have 2 empty seats. That's the only point I was making at that point. I mean, this is different. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Understood.
I want a full board. I think the more people on the board, the better representation of the people in the community. So when I pointed out in my email, in this last 2-year term, 12 of those months, you either had 5 board members or 6. That's more than half the time. That makes it hard on you guys. When it was 5, my God, if somebody's gone, you're screwed. You're screwed. So I'm not trying to. I don't want to take away your rights, but I'm just saying this language. You pass it as is now. You're not changing anything. You have the right at this election. If there's an open seat, or a month later, if Tanya resigns, if Tom goes to mayor, you're going to have an empty seat. And do you want to take away the ability? I mean, you're going to mandate that the board. I'm just telling you what you're doing. You're mandating that the board appoint someone that ran. But what if no one ran? You know, there you go. You're also taking away your right to have an election. You know, I'm just pointing that out. I'm not saying I'm for or against either or. But this language really doesn't. I don't look at. I'm just trying to let you know that this vote does limit the next board and the next board to doing whatever you say. And like I said, the 10% or any percent, it doesn't make sense. If the goal is to fill the board and somebody came in 4th and only 4 people ran, why you wouldn't appoint that one? Even if 5 people ran, you know. And you don't need to do any of this right now for this election because this has all been done historically. I sent you the packets, information.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. We need to bring it back to the.
Yeah. But I guess my general feeling on it, and I'm speaking to the board now, right, is that we prevent what happened last time if we include this language. We don't go to a special election for the vacant position if somebody that is a trustee runs for mayor and wins.
Yeah, that's why the timing of this
Yeah,
does matter.
We prevent the possibility that a board basically did what we did, which was, you know, maybe not the right choice, right? Like maybe a screw up to wait that long, to have all this time spent without a full board. This would remove that possibility from happening. And it would be
That
doing it, I
possibility
think, in
won't happen
accordance.
because if Tom is mayor, it's still 5 people needed on the board.
What?
We
Tom
should
is
bring
here.
it back. We have a time thing we need
Yeah.
to.
I know,
figure out.
but
I
if
need to bring it
Tom runs
back.
for
I
mayor,
need to bring it back to the board at this point, I think, because it's, I get the point. We get the point, and we've got 23 minutes. I don't think we'll extend beyond that.
Yeah,
so.
let's go.
So more comments. Oh, so with that, I'm going to end public comment because I had asked for others earlier and no one to raise their hand. So let's bring it back to the board for discussion. Potential motion. So I guess, I mean, part of me was caught by that question that like, do we even need to, does this have to happen right now? But then you kind of answered it by saying this solves the problem of this, not basically, but by setting this, by passing clarity for the upcoming election, we could not have the problem we had in the past.
But what I need clarity on now, because I don't know how to proceed on this, right, is I think that the current language is not quite right. I think we all kind of thought that it was not quite right. How do we reword this, Attorney Mattson?
The percentage of total votes cast, is that what you're talking about?
Right,
Yeah.
that 10% of total votes cast language. We need new language to do what we're trying to do, but I don't know what it is.
I like within 15% of the
Right,
next highest
elected.
So
elected vote.
what we're trying to do is
You see what I mean?
compel the next BOT to appoint based on the next highest vote getter.
Right.
And that person getting some.
Well,
In
fair
the
amount of
event that the trustee who ran for mayor gets elected,
Only in that situation,
only in that situation.
not in any other.
We don't want to remove the ability for the board to appoint in any other situation. And that's why I think there is that line in there under 2-4 that says this does not dictate BOT appointments.
Because there's just a certain amount of absurdity. We know for months that somebody is running for mayor and people are campaigning, right, to get elected. And we know this for so long. And then we just pretend that we didn't know it and like then decide to appoint late. It just seems crazy that we should have a system for if that were to occur.
It is an edge case, like understood, right? But we have precedent. It has happened.
We have high turnover.
Yeah.
Often trustees might be the people running for mayor. Like it just seems reasonable to have this provision to me.
But again, like, because I'm with you on that, it's like, I mean, we can't remove only in that situation and not remove the ability to appoint otherwise. And
so we're removing the option of going to a special election, essentially.
Right. Basically do back-to-back elections.
But I mean, that BOT at that time, they would be the ones suffering a smaller board. I mean, what do we care?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you and I didn't live it, but like Tom did, and Eric did, and Tanya did, and Karen did,
And they tried to appoint.
sounded pretty heinous.
They opted for a special election, though, instead of appointing. Why not? Why didn't you guys just appoint?
Well, we
Because
opted
we
for a
wanted
special
an
election
election.
for
We
mayor.
wanted people to vote
We
for it.
we weren't comfortable appointing the mayor. We wanted the people to vote for the mayor, right? And then because we were already doing a special election for mayor, we were like, well, we might as well do it for the trustees too, because it's already
there
being
was
scheduled.
At that point, there was only one seat available.
You made a decision at the time,
Yeah.
and I don't know. It just seems like we worked with the situation at hand and made a choice. That's what we do.
Yeah.
I really don't care that much about all this. If you guys really want to do this, I can go along with it, but I don't really see that we have a broken system.
I wouldn't have changed what we did. I know other people definitely would have, right? And I wouldn't be that unhappy if this provision was not included, right? So I'm kind of with you on that. But if it is included, I'm just trying to advocate for a very narrow window, right? Like not 135 difference.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
if we're going to be forced, if the board is going to be forced to do something, I want it to be in a very narrow circumstance. That's all I'm trying to argue for.
I think we all agree on that. That
Yeah.
15% of, and how do we phrase it? Does Jennifer know what we want so she can phrase it properly?
But the next highest number of votes in the election is equal to or is
Within.
is within, thank you, 15% of
The difference.
the difference. Well, within 15% of the,
Elected trustee.
Oh,
yeah, how do you say it? Of the last
Of the
elected,
lowest elected.
of the elected trustee with the lowest number of votes.
Something along those lines.
Wordsmith that. Get Jennifer.
15% of that, 15% of that difference though, because just to be.
Yeah, within 15%.
But within, yeah, I think within
says that.
15%
So
gets us.
We should say 15% or less because if it's within 15%. Well, no.
sorry, can I ask? I know Tanya wants this provision in here.
That's what
Jesse, do you want this provision in here?
I do.
no.
I do.
Tom, do you want this provision in here?
No.
Yes.
Billy does.
I can go either way. I'm not the one who lived through that process, and I understand that there was just like, you know, if it makes it easier from a process standpoint, I can understand that and get on board. Am I attached to it? No, but again, I wasn't the one who lived through it.
It wasn't that terrible.
So you're saying you would just get rid of the percentages or not a point? Like, what would you?
Section 2.5 would be scratched then.
Oh, section 2.
I mean, I think it's a pretty elegant solution and I like it almost for that reason
Yeah, I do
alone.
too.
You know, like I'm a little enamored by it.
That's
Like,
pretty.
I think Tanya had a really, really good idea and I really like the idea.
Yeah, I do too.
But in terms of what it does operationally, I could take it or leave it.
What it does is it provides a seamless transition for the next board.
Yeah,
where
and
the
that I
first
do like.
thing- The first thing we're not discussing is not policy. We're not getting anything done. We're talking about how are we going to fill this vacancy? And we're talking about, do we, you know, like we're wasting hours on it when we could be actually proceeding with town business.
Even this hour.
Yeah.
We're still.
Yeah, I know. Attorney
Well, yeah,
Madsen,
I can't tell you how many hours we've wasted. Yeah, not wasted, but spent. That could have been on more productive process.
we just need language suggestion from someone.
Because if we put it to election
I
again,
have it on the screen. Can you see it?
Oh,
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
if we put it to election again, if Tom wins, I don't even know if you're running, Tom. Sorry to keep putting your name in there, but hypothetically, he wins, then we all decide we want to put it to election because I would want that because I want it to be democratic and the people to vote. And if that everyone else agreed, it
I
would
like
be
that.
3 months. 3 months where we're sitting with 6 people again, which we've done it many times. I'm just not saying we can't do it. I've spent more of my 2-year term with 6 people than not. So, you know, whatever. The no's win. Just know that. It's great.
I'm happy with what's on the screen. I would be
with
happy
what's on the
voting for
screen.
that.
I would vote for
personally.
that too. And they can always appoint. This isn't, it just means this would automate it and then it can always appoint.
If it falls outside the threshold,
That's what I
that
mean.
is.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's what the automatic, it's either this or appointment, so.
All right, I'm just gonna do this, I guess.
Just do it.
Where is it?
She's typing the motion right on the top of the.
Great.
Oh, I can do it. I move to approve ordinance 840, repealing and replacing Article 1 of Chapter 2 of the Nederland Municipal Code regarding elections with the amendment that we change the wording at the very end. Oh, motion to approve or, okay. With the amendment to change 2-5, the difference to 15% or less of the total votes cast for the candidate elected to a trustee position with the lowest number of votes.
Second?
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes.
Trustee Severs?
No.
Trustee Corvalon?
Yeah, yes.
Trustee Sterling?
Yes.
Mayor Potem Holt?
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Good job, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, loyal opposition.
And I'm confident we will never lose track of this ordinance.
Do we need to get through employee handbook?
Yes,
We would love to
think
celebrate
that's
a full
a pretty-
holiday on January 1st.
that's a pretty straightforward one.
So,
But we still need to do
Selfishly,
everything.
Let's go ahead and go into it.
Okay. I can be really quick. So, town department heads have been working on the employee handbook that is before you. You have a red line version and a clean version. Here's a quick highlight of the changes. First, we've changed the definition of full-time and part-time employees from hours worked per week to hours worked per pay period. We removed any reference to the Nederland Police Department. We added in 2 additional observed holidays. So that's what we're asking for your feedback on: Juneteenth and Indigenous People Day. And then currently moving the half-day observed holidays, which is Christmas and New Year's Eve, to full-day holidays. Increasing holiday pay from 8 hours to 10 hours to ensure that those who work 4/10s receive a full observed holiday pay. Provided clarification about how PTO is to be used, and then allows me to work with departments on assessing 4/10 schedules. Attorney Matson also added in quite a bit of language, legal language related to things like harassment, equal employment opportunity, FMLA. And then lastly, just kind of wanted you to know that Town Hall does intend to move to a 4/10 schedule. We actually won't be closed at all. If anything, we're open an additional hour. Our teams will work 8 to 6, but we'll be open 9 to 6. So we have the first hour to work on things, but open an hour later, and then having staggered schedules. So there's no impact to Town Hall, but we are going to move as many employees to 4/10s as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So we're asking for your approval under Resolution 2023-51, approving the changes in the employee handbook.
One quick question or two, really. Number one, are there anything that the department heads asked for that you said, no, that's not reasonable?
We kind of spent a long time about PTO, a lot of back and forth about that. Currently, we are going to require that if you call out, you have to use PTO, and that's actually not currently in the handbook. And there was a big debate on that, but ultimately felt like we don't want people like banking PTO and being short and then all of a sudden taking a huge vacation. So, I would say we were pretty much in agreement over everything on here.
On the 2 new holidays, most workplaces I've been in, it's either or, but not both. I mean, there's a total of 14 now, it looks like, right?
Correct.
How close to alignment is that with county and with other towns around?
So the county does observe both holidays. The county observes a lot of holidays. So that would put us in line with holidays. Well, often on those days, we don't see a lot of traffic into Town Hall because most people just assume we're closed because the county is typically closed. We don't anticipate that adding in the 2 holidays will have a huge impact. And then plus we're adding in more hours of open because of the 4/10 schedule. So I guess we were hoping to kind of counterbalance that by having longer hours and then 2 more holidays.
Okay, and then on PTO, is that, that's not changed at all this time? What's the last time we did change it, and how close to alignment is that with other people's?
Probably been a long time, and we have a very high PTO policy, really high balances, high accrual rate. We're higher than many of our counterparts. And so we work really hard to ensure that people, because you can only roll over your max from year to year.
Right.
So we work hard to make sure that a lot of those people are taking necessary PTO. But we do have the emergency fund for say someone like myself who doesn't get under their PTO balance, I donate my overage into an emergency fund.
Got it.
That is used for people like on maternity leave or whatever I determine is appropriate if someone ends up having to utilize all of their PTO because we don't have FMLA.
Right.
We then utilize an emergency fund to supplement.
Okay. I sent over a couple of spelling issues, but beyond that, I'm game with this one.
Any clarifying questions before we go to public comment? Hearing none, we'll go to public comment. There's no one in the room. If you have any public comment on the employee handbook, now's your time. Hearing none, seeing no raised hands, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2023-51, approving the employee handbook with amendments and updates.
Second.
Thank you. We got a motion and a second.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahold,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Trustee Severs.
Yes.
Trustee Sterling.
Yes.
Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes, and that is the last of our action items for this evening as we rescheduled 6.4 to February. There are staff reports and BOT reports in the
We don't have to motion to continue an action item like that. It's okay to just move it.
Because it wasn't a public hearing, Attorney Mattson did not seem to be concerned that we
Got
just
it.
moved.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Tanya, do you want to give a verbal report?
No, I'm just working on the RFP for the performance. Not the summer concert series, and hopefully I send it to Kate, so hopefully she'll send it on to Miranda and Jennifer Mattson this next week because we're on a tight timeline. And then I also might not be at the January 2nd meeting, so just FYI, if in case anyone else isn't going to be there, you might not have quorum. I don't know. So that's
good
it.
to know. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Good night, everybody.
No, well, we've got
What?
We have to have a motion to adjourn.
we have to give public comment on agenda items. Are there any other comments, BOT, staff reports? Miranda?
Nope.
If not, everything's in the packet. We have public comment on non-agenda items. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 in there from different members of the community on everything from on several issues and several items. Any public comments on non-agenda items with folks in this meeting right now? There's no one in the room. Anyone online? If you have a public comment on a non-agenda item. Yeah, okay, hearing none, we will bring it back in and
I move to
call it a
adjourn.
night. Second?
Is anyone opposed?
No,
Great.
Deal.
just like the PC.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas,
Good night.
Happy New Year. Thanks everyone for being here. Great holiday.
Don't we have time for rights to the river? We got 5 minutes.
Alan, Rich, where are you?